I could not believe what I was seeing. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke.
Well, it's not an ape, because if the Sasquatch was an ape, we would already have one.
What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to CreekDevil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of CreekDevil. We have Dalton as our guest today. Brian, Tom, how you doing, fellas?
Pretty good.
Good. How you gentlemen doing?
Very good.
Yep, pretty
well, good to hear from you.
Well, let's go ahead and give you the mic, Dalton, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and then go into the things that have happened.
Yeah, you got it. I think let's lay a baseline with this. Let's establish kind of the context of what my background is, being a former assault team leader and sniper with elite light infantry and special operations units, which I kind of feel is, my baseline and logistical and tactical perspective of kind of presenting my experiences, which have taken place in the Cascade Mountain Range here in the Pacific Northwest. And, when I contacted you, boy, you remember that? It was just left and right and spazzy and really emotional. I mean, just really nothing was in perspective. My voice was shaking.
It's like a flood. It's like a flood the first time you talk to it about somebody, what you've happened. All this stuff just come flying out, and it's not uncommon.
Absolutely. So, with my background, I'm a guy who I've had a cell phone for a year and a half, still learning how to text and have an email. So my social network is non-existent. I just basically had a local Indian contact here. I think I told you, which was in the Klamath Falls area, and he sent me your way, gave me your email, and we linked up from there. I originally, with the 2019, and that's what I'm going to call direct contact visual, 24 yards away, backed up, and you're a military guy, Will, in backwards planning and sequence of events. I tapered that down to, which I believe the first encounter took place in 1998, second one 2014, third one 2015, and then, the grand finale 2019. So I whatever one you want to go, I can present that, and you guys can pick me apart like an onion on it. To me, the 2014 one, I heard some screaming, yelling. I found the tracks. I think I sent you a photo of that one, Will.
Yeah, we can go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
That'll kind of give people a context.
Yeah,
and for listeners who don't understand what you were mentioning there, for those of us who are in the military, reverse planning is something when you're planning an operation, and we'll say a patrol, just as an example.
Sure.
You go to the very end result and you plan backwards, and that's how you're able to fill the time properly with the equipment and things you need to do. So it's a great way to great perspective on things that have happened over time, and you get more accurate details that way.
Correct. So let's go for it. I salmon fish every day from April until, let's see, roughly the mid-July based on water conditions. I'm up at 02 every morning, back home here in my residence, roughly 9 o'clock in the morning. Most days go really awesome. 2 big 30-pound Chinook. Okay, great. there's two sequential events that I believe either fortunately or unfortunately led up to seeing something that has completely changed my life. And you know what I mean, Will. I mean, it's not just a game changer. It's and I'm not talking about spiritual, but it changes humanity, right? You see something that within our normal day culture is suppressed by many of the human constructs that we develop: hoaxers, liars, attention getters, the real things, the it's a very complicated subject. So
it alters your
my
outlook.
understanding of absolutely, and I realize, everybody we all physiologically are wired differently, but what I ended up running into, flesh and blood, the biggest animal, monster creature I have ever seen, ever. And like I said, with the backwards planning and, trying to suppress my, almost a PTSD, with that, how you explain it, PTSD, reliving the feelings, and that's, I'm going to do the best I can to suppress that so I can really get the details out and the context of how it laid out. So, like I said, I was fishing one side of the river. It's been pretty low this year, and there's a real unique special spot across the river. So we'll call this primary fishing hole is Alpha. The other areas we'll call Bravo. Well, the water had dropped roughly 8.5 feet to allow the fishermen to go to the other side of the river on Bravo. And the way you get up there is you drive several miles up the main road, which is a very, very small. It's a major interstate, but it's only a 2-laner. It goes through an area of the Cascades, and you then travel off that roughly maybe 6 to 7 miles on dirt road, one logging road. And for people that live in the Northwest, you know how those roads are. So you don't have to venture off very far from the primary road or avenue of approach, and you're in old growth timber, right? You're out there, and that's the only way to get to the Bravo fishing hole. So originally, I had caught a couple real nice Chinook, got in the truck, and said, hey, things I'm not feeling too many fish. Water's getting low. I want to go recon the spot to get to the Bravo spot. So, Will and I did kind of a route recon. Normally when you get to this particular spot across the river, there's a very steep grade that you go up to the top of the landing. And that's a very, very difficult way, but it's kind of the best way to get in and approach down to the river system itself. The negative part is that you're walking a very, very steep hill up. So for distance traveled from the top, from the unit down to the actual spot you want to fish, probably 2 miles. If you take the normal route as you're heading up the unit, it travels around to the right-hand side, and we all know it's very switchbacky, windy, but it's very flat and very doable. So if a guy's patient and wants to walk the extra 4.5 miles, you can do so on the normal flat logging road, and not a big deal. And I was kind of, with my weekly schedule, I'm like, you know what, I want to start getting in shape again. I'm not strapped for time. I want to start doing the hard route. And it's actually not a very defined route at all. There's a place where you can park your truck, and I'm talking about the steep part where you get up to the unit. So that was like kind of my secondary plan. I was kind of keeping the back of my head. But what I ended up doing was going around to the right-hand side, parked about halfway on the trail, got out and started walking and making sure, because we had a pretty rough, I would say, wind patch here the last couple of months. So there's a lot of the old growth timber that's down, and so I just need to make sure my travel route is good to go. So I would say a quarter of a mile while walking on the road, there was a big cedar tree that was dumped just parallel across the road. So your only two options are take negative grade, dive down and, off the road and go underneath, or, do your best to negotiate over that log or that cedar. And we're talking about a, 6.5 foot incense cedar. So pretty big, not very easy to negotiate. Third option would be climbing straight up the unit and over. So what I, just by luck and this with land navigation, really, we always want to drift downhill, right? We take the approach of the less resistance, right? So I drop my pack and I go under the cedar log, and I'm in the ditch. When I get down to the bottom of the ditch, it's a really nice fit. What I had first thought was somewhat of an elk bed. A lot of elk, a lot of deer, a lot of bear in the area. It's a very, very typical thing. I've been up to this spot my whole life, 25 plus years. And here's part of the context, and I'm going to try and blend all this together. I didn't see a bear that day, no deer, no elk. At the time, I wasn't really paying attention to it, not a big deal. I want to plan my route, see if I can get to the hole on the lower road. So I go underneath that cedar log, and I think, all right, I look like these elk beds down there, but, it's not. The grass is dampered down. Right off to the right-hand side of the what I would call an elk bed is the biggest pile of bear shit I have ever seen, okay? In our neck of the woods, we'll just take the Pacific Northwest. I don't even know what the state record is, but I know most bear scat is roughly not even a silver dollar. Very small, right?
It's not that
and that
big,
might be a big one. Not that big, right? What I'm looking at, it is twice the size of a toilet roll, your toilet paper, or a soda can.
Coke can, yes.
Coke, to that diameter, right? Or, the styrofoam that you wrap your pipes in the winter with. Well, I guess people don't have circulating water, don't do that, but we do. It's something to that nature. I'm going to say modestly, it was literally the size of a Coke can. No berries in it. Okay, it had some hair in it. So I'm looking like, wow, I'm just coming into contact with the biggest pile of bear scat I've ever seen. The volume of it, I would say 3 times the amount that if people have horses where we live in the country here, it was huge. You could, how would I compare this? The volume of it, you could take a brown paper bag from Safeway and you could fill that bag, okay? When we come into contact with bear scat, it's a pretty good little pile, but nothing to this. So I kind of checking it out, and I'm like, wow, that's a big-ass bear, man. Okay, when I come in here, I'm going to bring my M4 with me, and, even though that's not, 5.56 round, but enough to deal with a threat like that. So I go on my way, and there's more logs that are down. So I say, what, the hell with this. I'm going to take the hard route. I want to start getting in shape, and a good opportunity for me to climb up a very steep hill. Okay, so I go back to the house, clean the fish, prep for the next day. I get up at normal time, I think that day was pretty late, like 03. I decide it's going to take me roughly, 45 minutes to an hour right when I hit the trail after I get down to the old growth timber to the trail that leads me to the river. So I do that, and I park the truck, and another key thing to this is the terrain, okay? It's even if you're a hunter, you're not really going to approach it like I would approach it, right? Like I said, I'm looking to challenge myself again, looking to put myself in a very tight situation because I want the challenge of it. Special operations guys, you always want to do things the hard way. You like the challenge, right? So that kind of leads into the context of my positioning on how I went in. In a nutshell, my avenue of approach, I ended up getting the drop on this bear that I saw. And I break over the top of in dead space, right? So there's a lot of dead space. You know what I'm talking about, Will. You get in a unit and a landing, there's rolling dips, there's fingers, there's draws.
Correct.
A lot of dead space. So you could take you could walk 10 meters and you look like you're standing on a little knoll, you look over the edge, and I'm not talking like a dead-end bluff, but there might be a really nice basin or what would be another feature, a saddle or something. But
sure, there's more than what
you know
can
what
see.
I mean, right? So absolutely. So you could be sneaking up on anything. So naturally, I'm approaching it that way. And again, my wife and I shot a bear in there last fall. So like I said, we see bear in there all the time. Not a big deal. I'm kind of thinking, hey, we come back this October. I've never approached this way, and I'm noticing as a hunter, man, I could really get the drop on something. The way they can't smell you, they can't hear you. So I'm just going through this. But let me back up for a second. I'm a guy who when I leave my house, specifically because of my background, what we have in the Northwest area, a lot of potheads, let me rephrase that, a lot of illegal cartel growers in the forest. It's pretty common throughout the Northwest and other places. So I have some local BLM contacts who are officers that deal with this, so they kind of give me a heads up on things, as well as the state troopers. And the threat level during the last few months has been pretty moderate, but I always like to take care of things if I need to. So I had a Glock 17 on my right leg with 5 mags on my hip, and I decided to bring my M4 with 3-round mag, 28 in, and then I had 3 extra mags. So when I am approaching just to go fishing for salmon, okay, that's kind of a standard thing that I have, because the context of this situation is that I'm several miles back without any type of cell service or help. The most likely course of action that I'm going to run into that I can put into context in a box is going to be marijuana growers, cartel, right? So that's what I got going on. In my left hand, I'm carrying my absolutely beloved Sage 490 fishing rod and a really, really big net, like 60 by 70 inches. And and you can relate to this, Wolf. When you're moving tactically or just in general, after you do that for a while, it's a standard. It's reflex. So I'm walking, negotiating my terrain and hill. I got my rifle slung on my chest, and fingers on the pistol grip, right? Long safety out. With my right hand, everything is in my left hand. So I move roughly, after I'm high point, hit my dead spaces. I'm now at a little saddle, which is probably maybe 170 square feet. Pretty small, but enough to dip down and then negotiate over. And from that little knoll, as you break over, boy, it's coming back, Will. Here we go. When I broke over this knoll, I immediately to my front, and when I say 24 yards is because I went back out there a few days ago and I sent you that text, which I haven't been in several months because of this situation. Took my rangefinder and measured 24 yards. What is that? 72 feet away, with a negative degree slope, or negative 9-degree slope. Perfect visual. I see the ass end of, which in our area is pretty rare to see. I've only seen a few of them, and that's been in pictures. A humongous cinnamon bear, okay? It looks like it's got the ass end to me. So I stop, assess the situation. Hey, not a big deal. I'm just going to wait for it to do its thing, and I will respond accordingly to whatever that situation presents. Not a big deal. This bear stands up. This bear has got a frickin' pointed, let me be very clear, somewhere between conical and round, somewhere right in between that head. And this head is about the size of a microwave, at least our microwave. And I probably should measure that. I don't have a tape measure right now. I'm looking at it. It's huge. This bear gets erect. I notice arms. I notice a hand. And now I think if I were to explain this in the shorthand version and I mean no offense by this, to just civilians, you froze up. Well, yes, I froze on this level. You're damn right. I could not believe what I was seeing. And this whole event took place between when I broke that little knob or hill and I'm starting to go over, when I first zeroed in on what I thought was a bear, roughly this whole thing took 7 seconds. Okay? And the reason, the beginning of this conversation, when I introduced myself about the context of what my background is, okay? I don't freeze. You know, I'm belong to a unit, and I'm very proud of it, just like you are. Well, we're brothers like this. That my occupation was to jump out of an airplane, middle of the night, some foreign country, do a hostage rescue, or neutralize the bad people in the world. And I was a team leader of that. So under those circumstances, I would like to say we as a team, I as a leader, we made out every time. Sure, I was nervous. Sure, I was scared. Those are normal feelings. You get trained. You get a lot of experience in combat, and they become your job. Okay. Never froze. Well, when this bear stood up, and I identified very quickly, and what soldiers who've been in battle, it's a physiological response. Battle's terrible, but I think if you talk to a lot of guys who are at the very top level of this and deal with this, they're able to slow things down in that situation. They're able to get really fine details because your brain, through training, repetition, and experience, has to harness that emotion, that physiological response to freeze. You got to work through that, right? You turn that into aggression. You turn fear into aggression and action, right? And then leadership. I was unable to do that in this situation. Completely unable, because what I saw did not make sense on everything that I've known on this earth since day one, okay? The other thing about this is my reference to Bigfoot is pretty average. Anybody who lives in the Northwest, yeah, you hear Bigfoot, oh, that's cool. You move on with your day. You never think twice about it. That's where I was. And everything that I've been told my whole life just became a lie to me, okay? And I absolutely froze because I'm now trying to, within the skill set I have, what is my response to this situation? You know, do I put rounds on target? Do I throw sights up? Do I battle drill to break contact? You know, what the F am I going to do? I have no training for this. It's just something that, you know, I don't know a special forces drill in the military that teaches you move into contact or react to Sasquatch, CreekDevil, whatever the hell it's called. But now I do, right? Because I saw what I saw, and that is my reality. Perception is absolutely reality. Well, my perception was that I saw a 7-foot, 6-inch creature that had a round, conical-ish head, somewhere in between there, Will, the shoulders on this thing, a minimum of 4 feet, between 4 and 5 feet across the shoulders. And it had and here's another thing that kind of threw me off. What I did know about Bigfoot, you know, the normal signs you see driving on 5, they're all black. They're all, you know, they're black. Every black bear I've harvested, they're black. I mean, they're black. Bigfoots are black. This thing was an auburn reddish. I'm not quite sure what cinnamon means, but like a
Reddish
like that
brown.
girl on G.I. Joe, Scarlet, right? Scarlet,
Yeah, kind of a reddish
hair.
brown, and that was the majority of reports for years of
Wow.
the color reported.
Oh yeah, you had told me that when we had first talked, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that was confusing for me because when I was backing up, I think I was kind of rabbit trailing, but I knew exactly what I was seeing, even though it was out. It wasn't. I would have identified if it was a man. I would have identified if it was a bear, an elk, a million different things. But what I meant about slowing things down is like I knew exactly what the hell was going on and what was doing and what I was actually seeing. So when I froze on this 7-second interaction, what my response was, okay, and looking back now and all these months and since our conversations to all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and soldiers do that a lot, you know, especially if they've been in battle. I could have taken a picture, right, one option. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke, okay, because that goes into my explanation for my response and what I did. Or I could have just stayed there and passed out or whatever, soiled myself, a million things. What I chose to do, I dropped my $1,000 sage rod that I built rods. I just built that. Dropped my net, which as soldiers, we never drop our equipment. I mean, that fishing pole is just as important as my rifle. My muzzle went straight up in the air, and I'm executing battle drill 3 break contact. Immediately, I just claw out of that terrain I just came down through, get to the truck, and drive down. One thing I need to say about this, while I was seeing this, I heard some popping and obviously some other commotion going on. I have no visual sightings of it, of what I heard down there. You had educated me in our very intense conversation when I was rambling. There's always more than one or a group. It did not show me its face. It simply turns its shoulders roughly, and I don't know the degrees, you know, I'm sniper tray, roughly maybe a half a degree turn. And it went from left to right, or excuse me, right to left, and then right over the bank. And I wanted to back up and say, well, the depth of its chest between its shoulders, its chest, was almost as thick as the shoulder. I don't know how to explain it. And that photo I sent you, the majority of the muscles and mass was higher up in its body. You know, it was not tapered, and I'm not a great drawer, but it didn't bell out. It went a little more tapered than almost straight down to the sides. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was the absolute mass of this thing. It was so thick. I mean, thick. You've seen him, Will. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
Man.
It's incomprehensible once you actually see it.
Incomprehensible, man. And yeah, you know, we saw that Star Wars the other night, and Chewbacca was on there. It's kind of like laughing.
It's like an
it was so much thicker than that, man. It doesn't even come. It looks like, yeah, exactly. You're right, man. Anorexic, and not even close. You know, and it was hairy, thick. You know, I don't have any reference points to. You know, I can't compare it to a bear, and I don't want to get into conversations. Well, hair and thick. And all I know, it was very thick hair. And when I saw the muscles and what I would describe as deltoids, right? I couldn't really see its skin, but I could see the lumps of muscle, man. And yeah, that's where it is. And I'm sorry about the rambling, but
I described
it is an absolute life.
The ones I saw,
boy.
the hair was nothing like a bear's.
Yeah. Really thick hair,
Very thick.
clumpy, but evenly dispersed with its anatomical features. Is that maybe? Okay. Yeah, really thick. So I did react to the way, and I want to explain this because I actually told my special forces buddy this an hour ago. Number one, I told him because I wanted to not be emotional during our phone call. And two, when you're hung up on emotions, it's very, very, you can stray with details. And in your work, I believe the more people that can give you details, the more you can do with what you're doing. And I told him because he still has a top secret clearance. Those are kind of the two reasons. But I did react, and I reacted in a context of I knew that I was seeing something that is not an Al-Qaeda guy. I mean, boy, we wouldn't, if that was an Al-Qaeda guy or a drug runner, not a big deal, right? Unfortunately, I would be forced to use what my occupation was, and that's another story in itself. But the way I can give an example to, I either froze or, no, I broke contact, man. I did exactly what I did in that situation because I knew it was a situation that I could not win. I could not survive. And it took here's the deal. It took my fear level to a place that goes back to my context of who I am. Okay, I was that guy that dealt with very, very traumatic situations, very, very high-stress situations with 4 and 5 man team members, at most 12 guys. So my background is being able to handle these very high-level stressful situations that definitely involve life and death. But even with that experience, I knew enough to get my ass out of there. That's the only option, period. I've thought about it 100 ways. If it would have came towards me, yeah, I would have fought. I would have. That's the shoulda, coulda. That didn't happen. This is what happened, and that's what I did. And I'm embarrassed a little bit on the level of being a warrior, not being able to react. And, I've really drilled myself with that. But the best example I can come up with is you're on a boat in the middle of an ocean. Shark Week just got over, right? Jump in that water and have a 20-foot great white shark swim around you, okay? Then pull out your phone and take a picture of it, and then have the guy on the boat throw a diving spear. Look at that context. Is a normal human being, special operations guy, a priest, any human being on the planet, what is going to be their response? They're going to get their ass out of the water and back in the boat. They're going to break contact from that situation because they understand they have zero chance of confronting that animal, and they have zero chance of staying in the water or staying in that situation and poking at you. You're going to lose. That's an animal that we all can put into contact, right? That's the normal response. And in these 7-8 seconds, whatever, I estimate it to be around there because I've done nothing but really try and get my facts down since we talked. 7 to 8 seconds.
And these are creatures you have no context for.
Exactly, Wilf. No context whatsoever. And I drove back down to the road. This was my response. After I got in the truck, I I remember little details going down and what I was doing. I was definitely in a flight, but definitely still cool. You know, when I got in the truck, I unloaded my pistol, my rifle, did all. So once I broke contact from whatever the hell this thing was, Christ, I was still able, had enough, composure, right? Battle stress composure to do what I needed to do, clear my weapons. Now here's where things changed for me, okay? I think I was down on the road for about 20 minutes, and I specifically made an effort to talk out loud to myself. And my words were like, my exact words, I said, what the hell is going on? This thing's real. I got to go get my pole, man. It's part of my equipment. I mean, I have to plan to go get my pole and my net that I dropped in my left hand. Got to get it. So I'm pretty prepared. Like I said, I got my assault pack out, put flares in it. I mean, I really ramped up, and I ramped up to the level that I want to go do now the ops guy, the operator guy is back. That's me again. And I'm planning to spend the night. I'm going through a pace plan, contingency plan on every level. I'm using the skills that I drew from. I actually was more focused on net and fishing pole retrieval than actually in the mindset of, confronting the creature. I mean, that was in the plan, but that was not my mission. And I collected myself, I packed my assault pack, and I was planning on, if in my pace plan, and what that is, guys, is primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. It's a procedure that when things go south, which they always do, you don't lose your head. You have a fallback plan, so you know what you're doing. And normally these are planned on a very, 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 very rehearsed high level. I had to do all this within that 20-minute period. But I planned enough to where if I did have an altercation, that I had at least a 7-day supply. I had IV bags. One of the courses I went to was a special operations trauma course. So, this is just some of the gear and stuff that I travel around with. So I packed IV bags. I had tourniquets. I mean, I was planning on all the events. What I did was I backed up. I went the same way in, so it was the fastest way. Backed the truck up, opened all 4 doors, left it running, opened the tailgate, took as much weight as I could off. I went down, and when I went this time, I overwatched. I moved like I'm moving to contact, and you know what that means. Well, I was successful. I think I did this 25, I will say 30 minutes. Took me to retrieve my pole and my net, and then I went back home. And when I got home, I was pretty tore up. I had to treat myself a little bit. I had a lot of blackberries. I ripped my favorite pair of cargo pants. And here's where things kind of began. Like I said, what's very typical of me, and I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate to be in this situation. I'm able to fish salmon every single day, like I said, from April to about mid-July. Well, this year they shut it off on the 30th, but I stopped fishing, okay? Told my wife, I'm just not feeling good, no good. Well, she said, hey, babe, you just caught 2 big 30-pound hens. What the hell's wrong with you, I stopped doing that, and this period went on for 2 weeks, okay? I'm not sleeping. It's very apparent with my wife, and I want to say this, she has been awesome. She has been she's been one of the main reasons, besides you, Will, that I'm able to try and articulate what my experience has been with this thing, because she's just awesome. But she's really been that brave. But like I said, 2 weeks into this, she asked me, she said, what the hell is going on with you? I know it's not the war bothering you, no, babe, what's going on? I was very tight-lipped because I'm trying to work through everything I explained to you guys just now. A couple months go around, and bottom line is this. Things are getting out of hand. I'm getting pissed. I'm getting frustrated. I'm not able to emotionally deal with the context. I want to tell her I saw this thing, but how do you tell her? My biggest supporter in my life, my wife, she believes me because that's our vows and our bond. She's going to believe anything I say if I'm telling her the truth. But how do you bring up this? 4th of July runs around. We have a little get-together here. I'm still really tight, and my mother is my second, just as important. She's another woman that I can really talk to. They've been the two people on this earth that I've shared the most about my clandestine combat experiences with. So, that's just saying a lot. I finally pull my wife aside before we have this interaction. I tell her what I saw, and she looks at me, and not much to say. When you know your spouse loves you, it's just a look and a touch, and that's what happened. My mom comes over, and she what's going on with you? Pulled her in the room, put my hands on her arm, and I said, I saw this, Mom. She says, wow. You need to talk. She said her advice, you need to contact somebody who will truly understand what you need. You need to talk to someone. And that's how we interacted well. So, thanks for that. That was what happened most recently. And like I said, when we started this dialogue, what really bothers me is what happened, in 98. And like I said, you guys can hit me up. I know I've just kind of rambled, but that's kind of when I approached you the other day. Well, but this feels really, really good to talk with you. You've seen them, Tom and Brian, a group of guys that we got a little unit going on, right? And it just felt so good in this last few minutes. I've been, rambling on about this just to get off my chest, because it's not something that is accepted in any context, because it's so far out of that. So,
hey, Dalton, this is Tom.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump in for a second.
Yeah, you bet.
You're bringing back some feelings that I had when I first talked to Will and Brian and a guy named Troy a couple years ago. And I didn't see it, but I was in the Cascades and I had an encounter with a whistle. I can go through that later.
Oh, boy.
But, trying to explain this to people, let me just say, when I got on the show and talked to these guys, I'm talking to people that I don't have to convince.
Exactly.
Assume. And so, the fundamental myth concerning Bigfoot is that Bigfoot is a myth. Okay, that's the...
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So once that's understood, the other myths, they fall into place. And this so-called lack of evidence isn't evidence of lack. And actually, my understanding is, statistically speaking, 30%, and I think it's a growing number, 30% of Americans believe in the existence of Bigfoot for a variety of reasons. Their own encounters, family members, people that they trust have encounters. And so, well, what do we have population-wise? Over 300 million people in the United States. So it's a significant number. So after you get over that first hump of disclosure with those around you, and that includes us, you begin to realize, this is a far more commonplace occurrence. And there's actually a lot more people, even in your circle of influence, that are in the same situation or similar situation. I discovered that when I started talking about this with neighbors. I had a guy next door to me who had an encounter not far from your area.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Hey,
I just want to make that point.
In my latest book, the reason I published that book, it's called Bigfoot Evidence. It's not so much a lack of evidence, it's a lack of acceptance of that evidence.
Well said, Will. Yeah. Exactly, and you too, Tom. Exactly. And, that's that. We find it in politics. We find that's that human construct, right? Look how we have done that with just our normal problems, right? And in what we're talking about in this circle here, that's a whole different context in its own, right? So that difficulty between there and bridging that gap, right? And here's the deal. Good luck with anybody coming up to me and saying, well, maybe you didn't see what you see. Good luck. I mean, good luck. I'm willing to spend, I'm saying this within a metaphor. I'm willing to spend a few days in jail if you come up and say that to me. Okay? Because this thing, look how much it's changed anybody who has had contact with this thing. Whatever,
well, Dalton, I have a phrase.
It's been a ride, man.
For the people that want to put words in your mouth and tell you what you saw, and I've told Will and Brian this and other people, I got 2 words for them, and they're not thinking.
Oh, I'm tracking, Tom. I'm right there with you. And, when I approached my absolutely wonderful wife and mom, and like I said, I also spoke with my brother, the 3 main support channels in my life. What I said to them was, look, I got to tell you something. And what I tell you, I will not accept anything. I will not accept this phrase of, well, I believe you saw what you think you believe to be real. Okay? There's lots of circumstances of that. But it's a non-negotiable situation. And like I said, you know what I mean by that, right? I'm very lucky in that response to the people in which I chose to express this to. And I was kind of forced in a real corner anyway they knew something was up with me, right? They know even the war, and I've been really fortunate, the war doesn't bother me that much. I'm able to deal with things. And what I do, I bring them up, talk about them, have a good cry, move on, right? And that's only like lasts a couple minutes, and then things are good. But that's what I said. I'm not going to accept you telling me this is what you might believe. However I just put that. And I was very fortunate to have that supportive response. And then the only other individual I've told about this is, like I said, my operator buddy a little while ago.
Let me ask you
Can I still keep going? Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, man.
I had a question. So you saw this thing. Do you think it ever became aware of your presence?
Yes, I did. When I was kind of explaining about, all these tactical things as a hunter, we'll say I'm a hunter, right? We're going through my head and processing. Why was I able to get the drop on something that, whatever the percentage is, people hear, see? What the hell did I do? My mind goes this way. Those were conspiring to put me there, right there. I'm not sure, but here's the bottom line. For some reason, if I would have taken that normal trail where this event took place and where they were at, perfect hide site. I mean, they had a hide site. If I knew this little chunk of terrain was there, which I do now, and I know exactly why they were there, you have a complete avenue of you can see all the dead space. You can see complete observation of what you're looking at. Okay. I think the only reason I was able to, what I'd say, get the drop on these guys is just the way I approach in that funky-ass way. Like I said, I did not see the face. I'm really glad I didn't, man. I'm still trying to I've come to grips with it. Like I said, when we finish up, I'll tell you where I'm at with this now. But I believe its response is, I knew I was there, and I believe it saw me, heard me as I was cresting over that little knob to where I stood. But like when you see there's a big buck that's got you pinned. He just got done feeding in that open unit, and he's actually standing right in the wood line, but he's standing out looking at you, okay? Right when you even move, he decides to do a 180 and just disappear into the timber. We've all seen that. Same situation, but it was not facing me. But it's like, obviously it could sense my presence, and that's how it reacted. Turn around and look at me, and then take off. It just seemed to flow very smoothly, right? By the time I broke that dead space and cover, and I'm like, holy cow, that's a humongous bear. It did what it did. It was very systematic, time simultaneous. Does that answer you a little bit?
Yeah, very much so.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Dalton, I had a kind of a follow-up to that. And actually, you just kind of alluded to it, but I had actually the same question that Tom had, because you said that you saw it from behind, and then it turned and walked away. And I was also thinking the same thing, that I assumed that it had to know you were there. And I guess my question is, when it walked away, did it go swiftly, or did it just kind of nonchalantly just turn and walk back into the woods?
Okay, so like I said, I didn't do a good job at painting the terrain. If you have an open unit, a clear-cut unit, and it's going from right to left, a real steep angle up the road. You just follow the timber line. That would be called a ridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the backside of this ridge, and where I saw this thing, if you go directly to the right about 100 meters, that's the trail I needed to get down to. And that's the only trail. And what it is, it's a game trail. Now, on the other side of where this thing was standing is a terrain feature that I'm just going to say it's between a bull and a saddle. It's a really awesome big bull. Typical Northwest. It's got real high ferns up to your waist. Every time I go in there, I jump elk out. That's where they bed, man. Come out in that unit and they feed. The other thing is that I'm one of the last fishermen to actually go into this area. The guys that I mentored me, they're in their 90s, 70s of their past. So everybody fishes with bobbers where I'm at. I'm the guy that back bounces, fishes with lead. So nobody has a reason to even go to this area. So this time of the year, the elk are always in there. It's their natural thing. But the terrain feature, it did not get up and walk away. The only way I could negotiate where that was standing is if I slid on my ass, slid down, and slid down that grade. And it slides straight down into, like I said, this bowl area with really, really, good 2 mil logging trees. And actually, I used to be a timber cutter, so it's a really awesome stand of timber, and it's probably maybe a 6 or 7 acre bull. Really nice deal. So what I saw was that it just, by what I'm processing and seeing, it's simultaneously standing up, and I don't know what it did when it went over. When I went and took measurements, I took measurements to where I there was this little knob sticking out of the tree that had been busted off. Not a big deal. I had some pitch on it, and that's where I kind of estimate the head. And however it decided to get down that steep bank is something that the only way we could negotiate is if, like I said, we slid down. The only way we could negotiate is put a rope on the top to climb up. You could probably claw your way through it, but you're going to slide down. It was that type of grade. And like I said, I don't have much account or detail, or I don't know what the hell happened when I raised my rifle up in the air off my chest and I turned around and booked it. I didn't watch it walk down. I just knew it was going away from me and down. It was moving slightly from left to right. And the angle in which I saw, here's another thing, it turned its shoulders and the whole upper torso, it moves as a one unit, okay? I saw from basically, I didn't get a good look at the legs. Everything just looked like one solid lump, just this huge mass. And when it had rotated its shoulders to move left laterally, that's when I saw this thickness. And then that's quite a thing, that the thickness is wide as the shoulder. So I don't know if that answers your question, but no, it didn't walk away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you notice any odor?
I didn't smell a damn thing. Not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, and quickly piecing this together, I'm looking at it from just what I know, what naturally happens there, and what I see. The first day I went in there, I think I found Sasquatch scat. It's got to be. I've never seen anything like it. I always see bear in there. You always see bear, especially this time of year. They're eating the black, or what the hell are they called? Anyway, the local berries there, blackberries, they don't start until around now, but every time we see bear in there, they're always eating the bushes there. And, there's 2 resident bear I know there. There's always deer out moving around. And there's always that herd of elk right down in that bowl, that basin that I was talking about when you break over the top. So that was kind of an indicator, and I didn't figure those details out until about a week ago. Like I said, I really, I apologize for not knowing your guys' background. But I've been really got my head on a piece of paper, writing as many details down, because it's definitely a sequence of events to me. This makes sense. I go in there and I'll see a damn thing animal-wise. The only animal I see is something that is beyond. It's beyond whatever. Unbelievable.
Hey, fellas, I think we'll take a break here, and we've got.
Okay.
You're really doing a great job, Dalton, and I know you've got a lot more to talk about. So let's take a quick break, and we'll move on to the second segment. We'll be doing a second part with you, so stand by.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We're doing our second part with Dalton. Fellas, how are you doing today?
Very good.
Doing well, gentlemen.
Well, gentlemen, let's go ahead and continue with our talk with Dalton. I know he has a lot more to talk about, and then we can, whatever questions come up, we'll just go ahead and address those.
Yeah, so Dalton, I was going to ask, because I know that you were just recounting your last experience, but you also mentioned that you had 3 other experiences, and I'm just curious about those and how they compared.
Oh, yeah. So actually, when we just had a break, I wrote down 1998, 2014, 15, and 19. And the ones that have completely go back to that context of how it's shaken an experienced person, not the soldiers. That was just the application, but an experienced person. As far as me experiencing trauma in very high stress or stressful situations, 1998 is actually the one that is from a tactical level. What I just wrote down, so 1998 elk hunt near ambush, and I would have never just labeled that near ambush if I didn't have my background, because what I'm going to try and explain is I believe 100% is what happened to me as a younger buck. And Will, when we first talked, and as I was just shakily and rambling this to you, I had mentioned I was elk hunting and I went in the brush and I saw this and this was going on. It's like every little thing that didn't make sense to me, and like I said, it started in 98 on this elk hunt, came to light, right? And while working through the fear of it, and I had the context of understanding that whatever I saw on my fishing excursion is what was being executed. That's the word. Whatever I saw was being executed on me in '98. And this is when I was a civilian. This is when I had no base to apply any type of. I would have had no chance as far as practical survival. Everybody says, yeah, I grew up in the woods, and not me, but that's general statement. I hunt my whole life, and now I looking back, especially with the service, I didn't know a damn thing. You guys want me to go through the events? Was that your question, Brian?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Through the events.
Yeah, because like I said, to me, this is what I just told you about the 2019 and actual visual contact, and in '98. The only two between there is I found some tracks, and I had one of these things rip my target apart. We found 20-inch tracks in the snow. That's to me that I don't care. I don't care about the tracks. I really piecing together this '98. So 1998. I was a timber cutter at the time, and I did that like part-time, and I was doing that to put myself through paramedic school. I wanted to be a paramedic. So my occupation gave me a really good opportunity, spending out those early hours in the high timber in the Cascades. I figured where the elk are at, so that was pretty cool. And in the evenings I go to paramedic school. So found where the elk were at. I get there late. I actually had a final class. I think it was at 9. Anyways, I finally get in the bush around 1 o'clock or 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm driving up to this area. I cut some elk tracks going across. They're coming off the bank, going into a flat plateau area, I'll say. Not too steep, but the terrain is brushy reprod with your classic ponderosa pine, Doug fir, kind of a mixture of stuff, right? Visibility level is once you get off-road into this particular stand of this plateau, probably 50 feet at most. When you get around the bigger trees, your area's a little bit bigger. But I would say your average visibility is going to be 50 feet. So I get out, cut these elk tracks, and I had a really, really, really successful elk hunting teacher. My uncle. You don't follow elk tracks. You need to make a decision. Do you go right or do you go left? So I actually did that. Didn't follow the tracks. I walked down the road a little bit, kind of looked on my map, and like, okay, I'm going to approach this way because elk circle you and do all that stuff. So that's what I did. Put my pack on, not worried about noise because I'm going to go down to my avenue of approach and then bust in the timber. So I do that. I walk about, 100, maybe 120, 130 meters from where I parked the truck, and then I decide to put my insertion point in. I walk, it must have been, maybe 100 feet off the road, like really close.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a noise. Okay, and this is to my rear where I kind of where I parked my truck, not where I went in the timber, where I parked my truck. And what I heard was it sounded like a damn owl, and it went whoop, oh woo, oh woo. 3 different woos, owls, but 3 different types of tones, and that's it. Like, all right. I start sneaking. I don't see any elk tracks. I got my head to the ground, head up. I'm being a real inexperienced hunter at the time. To my front, I hear like cracking. I look up and there's a tree shaking. It's just whipping back and forth. Size of the tree is not much, maybe 10 inches diameter. I'm really excited. Like, oh my God, there's a bull rubbing his horns. I got these guys. I got them. I saw the elk tracks that I saw, is at least 15, 16 head of elk. I am right in the middle of them. That's what I'm thinking. So I start to approach. I take my pack off. I'm trying to get light because they're right there. I start crawling on my knees a little bit. This tree is still whipping back and forth. but I don't smell. That's a big thing. You always, when you're in the middle of elk, even after you bust them out, you can always smell them. They just smell. They smell rank. It's not a big deal. It's not like a wet dog. They're musky. That would be my musky. Not a big deal. This tree's still whipping, but I don't hear the horns. I don't hear the classic bull rubbing his horns. And he's not. And this time of year, he's not. Shining them. He's thrashing a tree because he's doing his testosterone deal, right? I don't see any elk, so I advance a little bit. I finally get to. I keep going, but when I get to the tree, there's not a goddamn elk there. Immediately to my right, I hear movement. Okay, I just hear the brush popping. My visibility, even under when I got to this tree, that 10, 12, 14 inches around, there's no way an elk is going to move that. When they do bust trees, they're small, man. They might be 50 feet tall, but the diameter is not very big. This is a fir tree that was whipping back and forth. To my left now, I hear the same type of thing. I just hear brush popping, but I cannot see anything. So I get down on my knees, and I'm looking for elk legs. What the hell's going on? I don't see a damn thing. To my rear, so tree's on my 12 o'clock, truck is my insertion point. I just walked in a straight line, like I said, about, not too far in, 100 feet. Now I'm probably 200 feet in. The truck is roughly, the tree is at my 12 o'clock. The truck is on my probably 8 o'clock. Well, I hear the same type of owl sound. It only does it one time, okay? To my right, I hear movement. To my left, I hear movement. And I'm very confused. I saw a tree shaking. I'm right at that tree. I didn't hear any elk bust out. Don't smell the elk. Here's another part where I say I was inexperienced hunter at the time. There's no elk tracks in there. So I had my head down. So I get up, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? They must have moved on me. They're around me, so I'm not successful. I can't see anything. Can't smell them. As I'm turning around, I walk from that 12 o'clock tree I'm at that was just whipping around. I about face, here comes a stick from my left to the right. And I guess it's not a stick, to be accurate. A lot of deadfall in the forest, tree, just a chunk of wood, but it's dead. It comes flying across from my left to right, about eye defilade, 10 feet in front of me. I hear another whoop to the back, what I would call like an owl. This one's a lot deeper. It's not. I don't know how to explain it. That's the best I can do. Mm-hmm. So now I figure out what's going on. I got people in here screwing around with me. Okay. Obviously, someone's in there yelling. They're not talking. They're trying to screw this elk hunter up. I still hear noises going on my right and left. In the distance, it's a little bit closer here, a little bit closer, but it's not right there. I still can't see anything. Can't smell the elk, I say, hey. Start getting really, really angry. I said, what the F are you guys doing? I'm hunting. Stop effing around. I have a rifle. Next thing that gets thrown your way is not going to be a stick. It's going to be at a .338 Win Mag. The right-hand side of me starts to, I don't know how to explain it. Is it a grunt or is it snort? I don't know how to explain it. It's a sound I've never heard before. The best I can do is I thought somebody was grunting, snorting, like, you got a big loogie. I was trying to avoid saying that like a 6-year-old. Got a loogie. That's what I thought I heard. So now I'm 100% convinced these are people screwing around. They're still making my right and my left are still making noise. I don't hear the owl behind me anymore. But I hear this loogie, grunt, snort, whatever it is. Now I'm really, really pissed. I figured these guys around me, they don't want to communicate, but they're doing their best to close in on me as people. So I turn around, I shoot 2 rounds in that tree, and I shoot another 2 rounds right at that stick on the ground. And I said, hey, I'm not effing around anymore. You know, and I'm very, very upset. F this, F that, I'm not messing around anymore. I said, you guys can effing have them. And I was referring to the elk. You guys can have them then, fine. So I just walked out of there, got in my truck, and took off. And then I drove around the other side and, you know, was very, very uneventful, didn't see any elk, didn't smell any elk. So here's where I'm wrapping this up. I believe I got caught and this is veteran Dalton talking now. I believe what I saw when I was fishing caught me in a near ambush, or that's what they were trying to do. Because there's a couple details here that don't make sense. You know, I mean, I know what happened now, but as I was working through this, and this is when we talked, Will, and these things were kind of going through my head, and I was like, you know, this tree was shaking, and oh my God, and you told me it's about numbers, and I said, do they ambush? You remember that conversation? Well, I was just spilling this out in our first conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I put things together, man. I believe, as knowing what I know about the military now, that they were drawing me in for a near ambush. And I can rule people out on when I skeptically, because that's how you got to look at all this shit. You got to rule all the other stuff out, even though I knew after I saw what I saw, this thing, as I was working this backwards planning into my head about the 1998 first encounter I believe I had, I believe they were drawing me in on a near ambush. Nothing, that I couldn't shake that tree, okay? An elk can't shake that tree. A bear, I had no, you know, rule a bear out. No elk horns, no bear claw marks. Okay, let's rule the tree out. Let's rule the crunching around. This snort, loogie, grunt. I don't even know how to make that sound, but I heard it on my right. And this is what I know from more. Okay, when you shoot at people, the normal human physiological response is for them to actually squat down, okay? They squat and they yell. They make noise because it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling when you get shot at. But I've done that enough in particular situations to move, we'll say, individuals from here to here. But they always make noise. And I've done it at close range, roughly a little farther away in actual combat. But the distance these things were around me, the normal human response is for anybody to say, hey, no, I'm just joking around. I'm just kidding. But nobody made a sound. And when you had told me the numbers thing, Will, and, you know, talk out loud, we kind of went through. It may have been our third conversation we had privately, you know, talking about making noise and talking out loud, and I believe my gunshots helped. And like I said, I told my wife this last night. It kind of hit me. I said, you know, no wonder I ended up in the type of ops unit I was in, because I'm such an asshole, aggressiveness with my personality, like type AAA. That's what I believe saved me when I was a kid and didn't know anything. I got pissed off. I yelled. And I yelled a lot, and I also fired a couple rounds, right, to the tree, into that stick. And I believe that's why I walked out of that situation. So,
yeah, Dalton.
Down and yep.
Oh no, I was just going to say, or just kind of an observation, and I was just about to ask Will this. The fact that, I mean, obviously, like you said, firing your gun, I'm sure, helped, but even prior to that, just the fact that you were talking out loud, that may have confused them, because they didn't know if you were alone or if that, you know, somebody was on the way, perhaps, and that maybe saved you. Just like Will, because this happened with Gerald.
Yeah, very similar.
Who's this?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody this happened to, Will? I mean, if you do, I would love to. If I guess I don't know how we get in contact, but there's some other details that are I need to sort out. There's a few other things that I really want to make sure that's accurate, but. And this is more on a tactical level, Will, of what was going on. Just besides I heard brush and I heard this and some sounds. Yeah, I don't know, Brian. Like I said, it just kind of my ability to get angry in that situation. Yeah, maybe talking about. I mean, I was yelling. I was really, really upset. I'm a 20-year-old kid who thinks he's going to kill his first bull elk, and and they ruined it, right? And all the way until, and that's what I thought, all the way until probably 5 or 10 minutes before I first made contact with Will, and we talked on the phone, and I just tried to, everything was just pouring out of me, right? I saw this and that, but that's where, to me, that's as a warrior, as a person, protector, just a normal human being, I feel like I was hunted, right? Now I can accept getting hunted by people, right? You guys used to pay me to do that. I can accept
you're on
getting
a level
mauled by a
playing ground
cougar.
there.
Yeah, I accept I can get mauled by a mountain lion or a bear, but we understand those things, right? But what I've been trying to sort out here is I do not accept. It's been beyond violating. Number one, strategically looking at another ambush predator, and that's what the hell I think they are, another ambush predator that was way better than me.
Yes, that's
right?
correct.
Okay? And that's beyond humbling, all right? It's not like when you see a big bear in the woods and it's like, wow, that's a really awesome creature. It's dangerous. There's some real normal, primal, instinctual feelings, but if it doesn't maul you and it's doing its thing, you look at that thing and you're like, man, that's pretty cool. I respect that thing. Nothing like this, man. This is violation. And like I said, I may have these intense feelings because I do know what it's like to be hunted by people. But this really trying to, and I'm still working through this. These things, I'm not sure I would have walked out of that, man. And I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. Looking back, what would my family think? That's a whole nother conversation about what actually is being told and what goes on with particular events. But yeah, that, to me, that experience, I believe the trigger, the initiation of actually seeing whatever I saw, really in the backwards events is the thing that really bothers me the most. And I mean, it's really shaken me up, man, because I don't like to lose, number one. Okay, I just, like I said, and trying to present my background of how I've lived my life and who I am. I mean, another predator got the drop on me, man. And I don't like it under those circumstances. I don't like that.
I'm going to jump in for a second. I just want to make a comment, though, if we can find silver lining in your experience, and I think there is one pretty significant. Everything you talked about is the describing of, the stumbling on this thing, okay, and the way you were able to get there. I really believe that you're inadvertently helping other people who are going to have similar situations and how to deal with it. So if there's, and there is some good that's coming out of this, is that you're kind of writing a book or writing a chapter, certainly a paragraph or two on surviving this situation.
Sure.
What do you think
Absolutely,
about?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'm sure you have your situational awareness is greatly heightened now that if you go back out in the woods.
Oh yeah. Tom, I'm first of all, we had planned to kill another bull this year. Actually, the photo I sent you, Will, I want to get the raghorn to the herd bowl. So unfortunately, it's in the same area where this went down. Real quick, yeah, I do, and this has changed with me, Tom, probably the last couple of weeks. I've been, like I said, I've been really trying to work through this, that it went from, I think, all the normal responses due to this context. I'm never going out there, man. And that's pretty big, you know. I don't really hunt for sport. My wife and I do not buy meat. We got the Chinook, and we always kill a couple bucks. We kill a couple bear every year. We kill an elk. So that's kind of our lifestyle. And when I said I'm never going out there again, it was big, right? Issue is now, and I better be careful how I say this, but I view this situation because I know, I need to be very humble here. I believe what they did to me was near ambush me or try. That this touches on lots of levels, national security issue for people.
Right.
People's safety in general, right? People's safety in general. And my approach now, and I don't mean any threats on this, but I did quite disclose my third reason for calling my office buddy is, number one, get off my chest. Number two, he's got the clearance. But number three, you know, I much am considering taking a tactical approach with some of my peers as far as going back out there. Now, I'm not talking about to neutralize. I'm talking about, I think that, and I say this in a very, very humble way, but there is a difference between trained guys going out, trying to understand this and get some tactical information compared to, you know, finding Bigfoot guys. I don't know a damn thing. Those guys know way more than me, but I know how to lay in a hide and be very quiet and absorb myself into that surrounding, right? And here's where I'm going with this. If when my buddy retires next year, because he actually wants to move down the street from me, if we can go out with the proper leadership through my new unit, you guys will, teaching me what I need to look for, helping with whatever your guys' cause. Well, my cause is along the line, I guess, national security, people's safety, number 1 and 2. But if you can go out and the area in which I grew up in, this will be my 26th year hunting these areas, if you can identify, hey, if we're doing this in this area, an AO, then maybe we can go over here and be safe and do it in this area, right? So if you can learn on a tactical level, you know, through all the normal stuff, what we call, you know, SR, special reconnaissance, to identify, hey, if this shit's going on over here, I'm going to elk hunt over here, so I don't run into these problems again, right? And however that information comes out, and what you guys are doing to help people and the reasons why. And again, I'm really speculating because, like I said, I'm so uneducated on this topic. And
you and I have
you know, I
talked
guess
about
what your guys' mission statement would be really nice to, you know, hey guys, we're not going to go elk hunting over here because, you know, these things they're hunting right now. We don't want to get caught in an air ambush, right? So,
right.
I'm really working.
Yeah, you and I have talked about
that?
working on a project together, but so we don't want to go too much into that.
Yeah.
I am interested on something that you talked about in regard to salmon that you caught and were missing and where you found the remains.
Yeah, you know, Will, and Brian, this was your original question, Brian. You know, what were my kind of other, what do you call them, distal? I call 2019 a direct contact. At these other and I would. Now I didn't have any visuals. The ones in between there, 2014 and 15, Brian, for your original questions, go along with all these other little activities. So what this particular fishing area, so I'm the last guy that goes in there. It's just kind of a dying breed and culture thing. You know, it's like guys in hockey, there's a breed that does not, their grandfather did. They don't have to wear visors, right? Not that many. And again, the tactics in which certain guys fish, there used to be quite a few people going into this area. And these guys are dead and buried now or too old to do it. So very modestly, yeah, I am one of the last guys that does this. Oh, my wife too. But when groups of guys are going in there, and I don't want to give a number to give it away, but we would periodically have our fish come up missing, okay? Catch fish, put it particular, how do I say this so I'm not giving away? We'll catch a fish, and then we'll step back from the riverbank itself, and then stage it in an area, bleed it out, and do its thing, okay? But it's kind of it's a very steep ground up against this hill, much like it's the same chunk of hill, okay, in which that bull that saddles in and where this creature, you know, evaded and took off. We put it right up against that. The bear in the area there's been, throughout history that I know of, with my own eyes and just talking to the other guys, because that was a big-ass concern to me, was, now, the bear don't come down here, and knowing what I know now, yes, it's not the way they travel and do things, right? The only other thing would be the river otter, right? But they're pretty spooky. They do take salmon, okay, but they don't take it out underneath your nose, and you don't find it hanging in a tree along the trail that you walk out a couple days later, a few weeks later. So when I had told Will this, it's been sporadic over several of my years down in this, what did I call it, gentlemen? Bravo fishing hole, that I roughly lost somewhere around 730 to, one of them was big, like a 42-pound Chinook, that just was gone. I caught my next fish, I tagged it, I'm going over there, and I was like, where the hell is my fish? Now, where we stand and catch fish, where we stage the fish, is probably, I need to be very accurate about this, 48, 50 meters, not too far. But the line of sight is that we're kind of in a depression standing on a rock right on the edge. And the only way to really see what's going on behind us is, you need to be about 30 feet tall, okay? But again, these are some things I've experienced, and I can only count for 7. The other guys I know, they've lost several over time. And it only happens a certain part of the year. It only happens in the springtime between April and July. And it's only been Chinook salmon. It's never been steelhead. It's never been silvers. And those are the only, fish we can catch. But we would find, or I would find, or I'd hear stories, or I'd find the other guys' fish. When we go in there, we used to go in there when I go with these old-timers in groups. And it's not right on the trail, okay? We start to smell them. But it's in that little basin area, like I said, where the elk bed down. We'd find them wedged in a tree, just the bones. Sometimes the tail was missing on it. Most of the meat was gone. Always wasps, flies, the normal critters that take care of it. But the issue is that it's about 10 feet in the tree, and it's just hanging there. And when I start to rule the skepticism out here, we always see, not always, but when we do see the otters, they have an SOP on how they operate, man. They don't drag it a quarter mile up the trail, a mile and a half up the trail, put in a tree. They drag it right on the riverbank, and they go to town and eat that thing as fast as they can, because the bald eagles come in and the buzzards come in, right? They need to gorge quickly, right? And as far as I know, throughout the history here in this particular area, I can't account for the rest of the river system itself, but no black bear has ever came down and taken someone's salmon that I know of in this particular Bravo area that we fished. So that's kind of a little weird this little thing that happens, but I start piecing some things together here. You know, it happens. I saw this thing that changed my absolute reality in life. I saw this in May. Our fish come up missing, like I said, anywhere from, now let me back up. The only time to get that we do fish in the Bravo area is when the water conditions, right? So if we got a lot of snow up the river and the river's blowing out high, we got to wait for the river to drop down. So there's been a few times that, you know, no one's been across the river, and then in my new generation coming up, you know, I would be one of the last, you know, individuals to do that. So on the timeline and frequency of it, it's very variable. But I haven't been back over there in about 3 years based on water conditions, you know. And that's the only reason I went to the Bravo area, is because we, you know, lack a snowpack this year and other conditions. But these things have happened. So, you know, that's just one of those things in this particular area. And we had talked, you know, prior to our conversation, Tom, Wallace, that you kind of know the area. If we draw that straight line, this goes all the way to, you know, kind of your neck of the woods. I would say the same Cascade Mountain Range and what I would call their AO, right? Their area of operation, whatever they do. These little things take place. But yeah, that's the deal with the fish.
Well, you know, the deal with the fish also is you've done a process of elimination for what could do that. Because I've seen the river otters. They're actually kind of...
You've seen what they do, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them, the ones I've seen actually were on the coast. I'm assuming the river, they're huge. They're about the size of dogs. And they eat crayfish and salmon and they get their hands on. But I can't think of anything that would, number one, why? What benefit would there be to hang that fish up in a tree? Number two, that's a behavior that none of us have ever heard of. I've never heard of that. That's...
Yes, it's... there's some logistics behind this. It's... and I don't want to give it away. The logistics of this particular spot, when we can talk privately, it'll totally make sense. So it's an opportunistic thing that only happens under these circumstances, right? You got to have a fisherman yanking them out of that particular hole and spot, putting them in that particular place, and along with being skeptical and ruling people out, everybody's there, right? We have accountability of each other, right? You know, even if there's only one way out for a human being, and everybody's going to see them packing their 30-pound salmon out of there if they're the ones doing that, right? So it's kind of an accountability thing where you can rule people out. It also only happens, which is unique to this particular Bravo spot, is that and a lot of times when we were all doing this, a collective group, there's guys both across the river from each other. So we have situational awareness and what I'm going to call accountability of sitting there staring at another guy across from you, and they're doing the same thing, right? But this only happens under circumstances in which we as a fishermen are fishing straight down at our feet and have our back towards the bluff, the rock, the terrain. And this, so, you know, there's this little other tactical flashing lights that's been going off in my head about these little things that have, you know, and like I said, I can only account for this, and this is over a 25-year period, right?
Hey, fellas.
But
the reason I brought that up, why it was an interest, is there's a connection to it. And
really?
I mentioned my book, Bigfoot Evidence, the last one I published. I put lots of pictures of different types of evidence in there, and one of the things I put in there, I received through our JRG leader, Jeremiah Fountain, from the Adirondack Mountains. And there's a piece of property.
Oh, New York area?
Yes.
Okay.
A lady who's a nurse who actually lives here in Northern California now, but is from that area and has property there. There's a tree on their property, and a deer was hung 11 feet up this tree 2 different times.
Oh my goodness! Over
a several-year time period, and these things could be for, you know, baiting other animals. In other words, if you're going to maximize the food intake, you put something up that's going to attract other animals. So you've
Absolutely.
actually magnified the amount of food potential.
Absolutely. Wow. And you know those deer, like I said, Adirondack said, I did some training up in that area. There's a pretty big white-tailed deer in certain areas. I don't know if it's a doe or a buck, but and I'm sure it varies in the area, but you're talking 200 pounds.
Right, and it's not something cougars do. When you look on the various states' websites about cougar behavior, cougars...
That's not their MO. That's not how they do it.
They partially bury their kills.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's just the opposite. Plus a cougar, a good-sized cougar could weigh, 200 pounds? They're not going to lift their own weight up on a tree 11 feet. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no kidding.
Do it.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah, I have pictures of it, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, like I said, Will, I feel like a BF, right, buddy effort. Being an Army guy, I want to get. I'm going to get my intel from you. I want to get the books, and you mentioned that. Like I said, I need to get on that. I'm trying to get a really good control of myself and situational awareness so that when I can start learning from you guys, right, all three of you.
Well, I think it's reciprocal.
I have myself under control, right? So I could, have the other lights going off in my head. I wanted to, Brian, I'm sorry, Tom, there's a little echo, so it's a little late. What did you say, Tom?
No, I just said, you said you want to learn from us. I was saying it's entirely reciprocal as well. So.
Sure. Well, did you want me to mention, like I said, I briefly wrote down, when I told you my unit member, him and his wife, and myself, and another one of our ops guy was on leave, we went out target shooting, and we found the 20-inch tracks.
Yes, that'd be
like I said, oh, okay. So this is 2014, gentlemen, same area. We're talking 15 square miles, okay? Different elevation. Circumstances were, I had my buddies here on leave. There were 5 of us and his wife. What do Army guys like to do? They like to go shoot shit, right? So we ordered like about 2,500 rounds. Went really high up in this area, and then it snowed. And it was a lock gate. I had a Jeep Rubicon at the time, and we had, Jeeps are really nice as far as maneuvering. So we were able to cut several miles off our trip just to get to this area. And what we did is the day before we spent about $250 building a target, and we were going to do some 1,000-yard. About 800 yard shooting, 800 meter shooting. The area in which we set the target up, we wanted to put it right in the road. So just if we're down on the lower end part of the road, we're shooting up. We wanted positive angle shots that day. So we spend a lot of money. We buy 4x4s. We're using huge lag bolts, like, when you're building joists, you're building decks. We put a lot of effort and money into building these targets. And what we did, targets, and probably measurements were, I think it was 6 by 8. So that's the dimensions of target, 8 feet high, 6 feet wide, and it's all 4x4. And it's all lag bolt together. I'm talking bolts, nuts, washers, because we're hanging these very heavy gongs on it. And our idea was that, we need a really good military-grade target. It's not to set a pop can out there, and, we want to do some serious shooting, get some new data. I had just built a 338 Lapua, so I wanted some good data. And the conditions were we didn't want to drive if something happened to our target because it's kind of a switchbacky road. It takes a long time driving distance to get there just for an 800-meter, slope shot. So it had snowed that day, and we were the first and only people up there from when we drove off the main highway, and we broke track all the way up to this area. The borders are not too far, Tom, from, we'll say okay,
yeah.
you know, that type area. But just take that and go directly due east 50 miles, okay?
All right.
Somewhere around there, okay. So, and then, well, I'm giving a smoke screen, but the same, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. This is tricky
I'm good.
because my wife, she said, you know, you are such a bad liar, man. So I'm like, all right, cool. Anyways, there we go. It's out. Who cares? We set the target up, and we brake track all the way, you know, I mean, geez, long distance. So we're going to rule people out all the way, okay? No human contact out there. And besides, all the bordering areas with, like, you know, warehouse or BLM, all locked off. So we're the only 5 individuals up there. We bang off probably, I think, 1,200 rounds that day. Target's doing awesome. I mean, we got great data on the 338 PUA, but they're like, man, we got to come back again and get the rest of it. So, you know, pack up, go home. We get back up there the next day, and I think it snowed. I'm not sure exactly, but it covered enough to where our tracks were completely covered. So we're breaking track again. Get up, get to the same area in which we shot. We can't see our target. It's gone. What the hell is going on? Well, what's going on? So we have a target that weighs, I'm going to say 300 pounds with the gongs hanging on and the 4x4s.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing. Like, we specifically, we really sandbagged it in. And, we just shot over 1,000 rounds and hit this thing, and it didn't fall. It did snow. We specifically went to this area because, we tracked the weather conditions. It's not windy out, so we're going to roll wind out. Kind of all the variables that don't make any sense. We all get in the vehicle because it's kind of confusing. So my buddy's wife, 2 guys, myself, and another. Or, yeah, 2, 5, 7, yeah, okay. We drive up there. Our target is in pieces, okay? It's kind of on the left-hand part of in this road, I think is probably just big enough to put, Suburban with, or one of those units called Chevy, Chevy Suburban, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, the road is very narrow. And the reason that's coming to my head is because some of the forester guys, the Forest Service guys in our state, they drive those. Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's why they make them that wide in this particular area. So,
and they pin straight
narrow
truck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, roger that. So our target is ripped apart, and what we see is and it's kind of on more towards the left edge of this brush. It's not brush. It's actually, dug for, that's about, 9-10 feet tall, really young stuff. But it's like you know what I'm talking about, Tom, really clumped together.
Yeah.
Well, like you walk 2 feet in, and yeah, it's close, man. So obviously they'll thin it out. But the point in which these big tracks came out, and it was a straight line, and it wasn't very far. I mean, I think we counted like 13 tracks from where it actually came out of the left-hand side of the brush there, of these fir trees. It walked in a straight line to the target, and there was just a commotion around it. I mean, it literally looked like a big mess. Okay? I mean, just if you could roll around and, get underground and make snow angels. And yeah, look, it really pissed. That's kind of looked like somebody got really pissed. To the left, yes. Target is on its left side, or to the left area of the edge of the brush area. The tracks then leave this commotion area. And like I said, the best way I can describe it is obviously see the line of tracks going to the target, but the snow was so torn up. You can actually start to see, the bottom of the dirt aggregate road there. And then right from that area, the tracks go, I think there were, and I got the pictures of this, I think there was another 6 tracks, and it went right back in the same area it came from. And the issues with that is that I stuck my rifle barrel down to it, and then from the end of my muzzle to where I had a 28-inch barrel on it was where the stamping was on the 338 Lapua, the barrel there. It was on the part of the 8. Okay? Brought that home. When we brought it home, it measured, 20, it's somewhere between 20 and 21 inches. Like I said, we did the best we could with the snow. We averaged some things out. So we'll say 20 inches. And the other issue with it is that where the tracks came in and went out is a major, major, major bluff. Okay? You know how it is. You got that steep kind of ridge, you got a little bit of terrain, flat spots, benches, and there's a lot in the Cascades. There's a lot of, I guess people call them dead-end bluffs, but they're not too bad, but you're not going to crawl out without a rope, right?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, we saw this. My buddy's response was to his wife, get your ass in the truck. The other 2 guys and I, the rest of us. And I don't quite have my count down, guys, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to be real accurate, but 1, 2, doesn't matter. The commandos here. We take a knee, we look at each other and said, are we seeing what we're seeing? We're like, yeah, so we did. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. No. What?
I'm sorry. There's kind of an echo on my end, and I'm sorry. I feel like it's going to echo. We take a knee and we do what's called 5 and 25. So we spread out, start scanning, and we try to cut tracks. We're looking for human tracks. We're looking for everything to try and explain this situation. Okay, and we can't. We do the best we can with looking over the edge to where we think it's going to go. But like I said, we got kind of a good look, and it's rocky, bluffy, and it looks like it's vertical. I'm not saying the thing jumped off. I mean, obviously it negotiated terrain that was illogical for any of us to negotiate.
Yeah, but not.
And that's that. I mean, that it sounds. I think. After going through 1998 and actually seeing this thing, that encounter, to me right now, it's like, yeah, that's okay, cool. It's not really important, even though it's important. But the issues are when we had first created our conversation about, the 30% of this and believing and not believing. Even after this happened to the group of us with our experiences, we came home and we just ordered pizza and beer and had a good time. We haven't spoke since about it until I made that phone call. I told you earlier to the same gentleman.
That was my question, Dalton, was after all of this, you weren't really that interested and maybe not a believer or just kind of on the fence. I know that's the question on a lot of our listeners' mind right now is, where were you at?
Quite honestly, this is exactly where I was at. It was really exciting, as Ed mentioned, we grew up in the Northwest and hear this, but when you see this, it was real, and I believed it then. The problem, I believe, I didn't see anything. It just did not register, man.
Yeah.
And I was still of that opinion of, there just might be one in the world, and wow, we saw its tracks. It tore our target apart, and that's another thing in itself. When I really drop back, I can't believe it ripped those 4x4s and lag bolts apart. That's unbelievable.
Well, it's that
you can't even do that if you drive over it with your truck,
Well, why did they do it? They must be
Um,
watching you shoot those targets.
yeah,
They were observing you.
and I can only imagine, and if you look at it this way, I'm like I said, my perception now on these things is they're a big threat to a level, and I kind of tried to explain that earlier, but I think at the time I would probably chalk it up to if 1,000, I think it's 1,200 rounds that day, the 338 Lapua hit this gong all day long, I think that pissed me off. I don't know what their hearing abilities are, but
Hey,
that
fellas.
could be a reason.
Tom, I don't know if you remember, but when we talked to Lee recently, he had a very similar situation, actually, with an outhouse. If you recall, he talked about one of these things apparently took offense to something he did, and it ripped that outhouse apart, and it was built very sturdily, just like the
Wow.
target.
Yeah, it's funny because
Wow.
it seems like they react and they have kind of a short temper in some situations.
Sure.
They have a short fuse, and they take it out like on the outhouse, this, and then in Will's book, they took it out on some people's, the one in the occult. Do you remember that, Will?
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they-
it's something we do hear about occasionally.
Wow. It
And I'm going to
didn't
comment.
scare me. It didn't.
Area.
I'm sorry. It didn't scare me, Tom. To your question, it did not. I was intrigued. I was fascinated. It was exciting,
Yeah.
but I did not understand the fear level. I did not understand that until that's what I've been working with these couple of weeks, right? And I told my mom and brother about that, and like I said, they're very wow, yeah, they're not. They believe, and I mentioned too, Will. I'm Ojibwa, Chippewa Indian. If I could just hit on that real quick, guys. Would
Yeah.
that be all right?
Absolutely.
And you kind of know about this, Will. Was trying when I saw this creature. My initial feelings were not just I would think the normal ones of this is irrational. What the hell's going on? I had this feeling inside of me that was very, and I'm not talking spiritual. I'm talking beyond physiological. I'm talking DNA, right? And it's really simple the way one of my and currently living ancestors presented. The gentleman he asked me when I seek this individual, he asked me what tribe I came from, but yet my last name does not match up with any, there's no hints that I would be Native American, okay? Because I explained the way I explained to him, I think he already knew. And the way it was presented to me was that it's embedded in our people, and he just said our people. But my paramedic in mind is on that physiological level. We all have traits, we have feelings that we might feel, smell, that may happen from caveman days. But how do we apply that? Or what does that mean? And the way he presented to me to help me understand the way I expressed my uttermost fear of not understanding was that our people, the Ojibwa, Chippewa, dealt with these things in Canada, and I think my particular family connection came down through Canada and in the Michigan area and things like that, and that's what he said to me. So, I'm very logical. I'm very I need that data and proof. I mean, it's either black and white. And again, I'm not talking the spiritual part, but that really made a lot of sense to me. And I believe these extracurricular feelings and these heightened awareness are not from a soldier's point of view. They might be the fact that I'm living blood, like all of us might be tied to these things with our ancestors back then, having to deal with whatever's going on back in the day. So I thought that was really interesting. At least it was a pretty damn good explanation that took a little bit of weight off my shoulders with what's going on, whether it's right or wrong, it made sense to me, right?
Yeah, my family's Chippewa also, but we didn't have any, and I never thought to bring it up. Yeah, everybody's from Wisconsin, at least on my mother's side of the family.
Oh, wow.
My father's.
Well, you and I got more in common. You got more in common than you'll ever know. That's where my family's from.
We do, yes. But, I think it doesn't have to be necessarily native blood. I think it's as a species.
Oh, yeah.
We have genetic, I think there's genetic memory with these things that go far beyond any written or verbal history that was passed down. I think our ancient ancestors had a lot to deal with these things, and we've forgotten about it because I think we felt that we exterminated them, this threat, and we have forgotten it. There's just echoes of stories that are fairy tales and things that have a common theme. I think it connects to our actual encounters with these things or dealings with them.
Wow. So would that be what we may articulate as primal fear?
Yeah, I think our ancestors were preyed on. I think our ancestors were preyed on by these things to a large extent. And it kind of drove us to be what we became. And as a former soldier like I do, in our natural state when we're fighting, we're very nasty creatures. And
yes, we are.
And we're pack hunters, and it's what put us at the top of the food chain, at least what we thought was the top of the food chain.
Exactly.
And look how we react to threats against us. And I always use the example of a dog, man's best friend. When a dog bites somebody, it's almost universal now, at least in this country, to put the animal down. So if we react that way to a man's best friend, what are we going to do to something that's eating us?
Yeah. Wow.
Well, fellas, we're actually getting kind of close on our time here. Any final thoughts?
Just want to thank Dalton for coming on.
Yeah. Oh, guys, listen. No, thank you. This has been I think it's been a very life-altering, emotional situation here. That, like you just said, Will, touches us from our DNA all the way back, whether we're Chippewa or not, all of us, right, through our history, and it's still doing it now, right?
Correct.
But then it's been a huge, honor that you guys would just let me process and vent. Much the same through any type of, and I'm not embarrassed to say this. This is over the top. Combat was bad, and I'm sure I'll get some perspective and balance this out. But right now, this is traumatic experience of seeing one of these things, looking back, knowing that. What did you just say, Will? They used to eat us. I thought, well, yeah. I'm sure they were going to get me. But it's been a very grateful. I thank you for the service you guys are doing, have done, and are going to do to offer, myself, others, anybody who is dealing with this trauma, an area to vent. And man, my shoulders are light again. So I really, really appreciate it, gentlemen.
Well, Dalton, I do too. It's an absolutely fascinating account. I got to say that to me, it felt like today for you're doing a debrief with us, and you're telling us,
yes,
especially on that last experience, things that you did right and things that you would have done better. And so in that sense, again, I'm just going to go back and say what I said earlier, and that is your information is helping others. We're building the knowledge base, and you're helping others if they run into this situation, how to deal with it, how to react. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, guys.
And if you'd like to, you can come on again, and we usually do a Q&A. Some of the shows we don't. It depends on because we're a little behind on recording those, but sometimes the witnesses are very interesting. Of course, we have Jim's narration that'll be it's on the end of each show. But you're more than welcome to come on and do the Q&A with us, and that's just we throw around questions and talk about various parts of this subject.
Sure, I would be more than honored to do that. I don't know anything. I don't, but
I'm sure you have
like
questions.
I said, I'd be more than honored. Oh yeah, absolutely. I would be more than happy if you'd be willing. So thank you so much, gentlemen. I really, really appreciate it.
Brian, any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm all set. And once again, just thank you, Dalton, for coming on and sharing your experiences.
Absolutely, and
no,
fellas,
thank you.
I really appreciate you guys, taking the time. And folks, stay tuned for the next segment. I'm speaking with Richard today. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
I'm battling a little bit of a cold that I've had this past week, so I hope you'll bear with me a little bit on this. Let's just get right to it then. Tell me when you had your first encounter and just kind of walk me through everything that's happened since then.
Okay. Actually, my first encounter was I found a footprint. I was setting up a hunting blind in northern Idaho, and that overlooked a water hole, and I brought my wife and my son with me. It was way before the hunting season started, and I set this blind up, and I walked down to the pond to sort of check it out, see what kind of animals were there, because there was mud around the edges. And I got down there, and I saw there was just elk and deer tracks everywhere, so I started to skirt the left side of the pond, and I come up upon this track, and it just totally flabbergasted me, because I've always kind of believed in Bigfoot, but when I saw that track, it completely cemented the whole idea. It was an amazing track. The toes, all of that. It was the real deal. And I turned and looked at my wife, and I said, "Honey, come down here. Bring the camera, please." And she came down, and I took pictures of it. And it was an incredible track. So to fast forward from there, I was heading to the casino up by Warley, Idaho, and that's where I saw my first sighting. I was on my way to bet the Kentucky Derby, and it was the first Saturday in May in 2014. And as I was driving along the road up there by Tensed, I always look into the meadows as I'm driving by. There's little finger meadows that go off, in the timbered area, and I just always look in there just to see what type of game I can see. And right on the top right corner, up on this top of this little meadow that's fenced, it was fenced in, I saw what I believed to be was a Sasquatch. It was very tall, reddish brown, rusty color. Mm-hmm. And as soon as pardon me?
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, I pulled over, and I go, "What in the heck was that?" And my wife goes, "What'd you see?" And I go, "I think I just saw a Sasquatch." And I turned around, and I came back and pulled over and parked and got out of the car and looked up, and it was gone. So whatever I saw there saw me pull around, and it took off. So I started doing research on that, and it seems like maybe 70 or 80% of Bigfoot sightings come from cars when people are out driving around.
Yeah, it's about 70% along roads.
Yeah, that's what I found in my research also, is that's about 70% of all sightings are just like what I had. So later on that October, that I was getting ready to go elk hunting up near Beauville, Idaho, and I have a favorite spot that I like to go to, and I backed my trailer in there, and it's an open trailer. There's no roof on it or anything. It's just one of those little utility trailers. I use it to haul my deer out, and I sleep in it overnight. But I got up there the night before elk season started, and I set my camp up. And was hanging out by myself, because I hunt by myself. I know a lot of people don't think it's a wise idea, but I am way more successful doing it. And I was born and raised, or not born in Alaska, but I was raised in Alaska, and I know, you know, my way around the woods quite a bit. So I had a couple of beers, and I crawl into my sack, and I'm laying there, and I fall asleep, and about maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, the alpha male, from what I believe he cut loose with a T-Rex scream less than 100 feet from my trailer, and I could feel the vibrations from his volume. I mean, I could feel it laying down in my trailer. And so I sat up, and I grabbed my rifle, and I'm looking around like, what in the heck was that? And it was amazing. But just this sheer volume and power of that scream was, gosh, it frightened me. And I laid there until daybreak. I did not get out of my trailer until there was a little bit of light coming up. And when I got up, I looked around, and I was like, I'm getting out of here. So I just packed everything up, and I drove back to Lewiston, because I did not know what that was. And I started to listen to Bigfoot screams. You know, I got a hold of some of Ron Moorhead's and that Ohio scream, and I listened to a bunch of them. And then when I found that T-Rex, that was it. It was identical to that one. It was just amazing.
It was nothing like
the scream.
Nothing like any of the recordings you heard.
It was kind of like the Ohio scream. It had that long drawn out, you know, and then it dropped, and then the volume dropped. But it scared the heck out of me. It really did.
It was just the one vocal, just the one vocal.
Yes, it was. Yeah, just one.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He just ripped it out. It sounds kind of like a roar, and then it goes into a scream. You know, and then that long, drawn-out scream. It was powerful. I couldn't believe it.
I can relate. I've heard the same thing up in the Olympic Mountains in Washington. There were some noises back in the early 70s from Snohomish, Washington, that sound very much like what you're describing.
Yeah. I've had so many encounters that I did not have an audio recorder on me, and I am kicking myself to this day for not getting one earlier than that. Because, oh my word, some of the stuff I've heard, it's just unbelievable. You know, and I carry one now wherever I go. I've got one in my pocket all the time. I sure missed out on a lot of opportunities, but heck, there's always the future. There's always a chance that it'll happen again.
Absolutely.
This place, this place that is now my main research area. It is really rich and hot in evidence. It always seems that I run into them when I go up there. I've kind of figured out their patterns of movement. There's a large reservoir nearby, and they hang out there during the summertime. And then in the fall, they move over to where my hunting camp was set up, and they kind of make a circular pattern. It's pretty interesting. I'd say there's probably 4 or 5 members of this clan. That's what I from the footprints I found. I found footprints in the snow. I busted up there in the middle of winter in February, and my truck was the only tires tracks through this road. I mean, I was in 4-wheel drive, and I'm low, and I just barely made it back in there. And I got out, and I saw this trackway. I saw some tracks running along the fence line, so I walked over to it, and boy, there's some pretty big tracks. Nice ones, about 17 inches, probably by 8 or 9 inches wide. Right. And I stomped my foot down next to it and took a picture of that. And it went along the fence line and then crossed over and went back into the woods. But I've got pictures of all of that. I try and take photographic evidence as much as I can. So
Right,
I'll
that's a good
carry
plan.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good plan. It's if you can hide a camera in your hand. That I've
yeah.
taken some pretty nice pictures of structures in that area. That pretty impressive. There's a
I
nice
have to come and visit you.
Oh, you should. Hell, oh my gosh. I could show you this area, and it's really, really hot. I get tree knocks every time I stop, and I've heard their language spoken a couple of different times. It's pretty cool. I wish I had my audio at that time when I didn't, but yeah, they were less than probably 100 feet from me when there was a sentinel up in the top of a tree. And my wife and I were on a deer hunting trip because I figured, stupid me, it's a road that runs through the middle of thick forest, and all of my action was on the right side of the road. I had never thought about going on the left, and I thought, okay, it's safe to go in there and deer hunt because everything was on the right side. Well, I walked down this little Forest Service road that's been overgrown with my wife, and we were looking for deer, and I came up around this corner, and they like to imitate crows, loud cawing.
Mm-hmm.
And I come up around this corner, and I must have surprised him because he was up in the tree, and he just started crowing like crazy, and then a couple of really panicky wood knocks, bang, bang. And then he said something in his language, and it was so rapid fire that I caught it, but my wife didn't, because she was on the deer hunting mode. She wasn't thinking about birds. But as soon as I heard the volume of that crow sound, I knew exactly what it was. And I stopped, and I go, "Did you hear that?" And she goes, "What?" I go, "That crow. Did you hear that crow?" And I go, "That's not a crow." And I go, "Just listen for a minute." And then in a little while, a few seconds later, a real crow crowed. He was off in the distance. I go, "Oh, there. See? That was a real crow. Now listen for a minute." And she's sitting there listening. And then the sentinel crowed again, but it was like, caw, caw. It was a gravelly voice, and it was a nice try, but it wasn't fooling me. So I kind of looked down and I go, "They're here." And she's, "What?" And I go, "Sasquatch, they're here. They're right here. So let's just keep going." I said, "Let's just keep going." So we walked on further, and she started hearing some rustling on the left, and then in front of us, probably another 75 to 100 feet, another really loud crow crowed again. So I know that they like to get you into triangles. They like
Right.
to get you into a triangulation. Well, we were standing right in the middle of the triangle. And I kind of looked around, and my wife was like, "Let's get out of here." And I go, "Oh, let's just wait a minute. No, let's see what's going on." And she goes, No, I don't want to get hurt. Let's get out of here." And I go, "Okay." Well, so we carefully backed out, and they were crowing all this time. So as soon as we got past that sentinel in the tree, we got past him, everything stopped. And then we walked on out to the truck and got in and left. That was the first time I actually heard their language, and it's impressive when you hear it, in the real, in nature. It's quite interesting. I could make out syllables, and some, it was so fast though that your ear and your mind has a hard time keeping up with it.
Right.
But it sounds like it's being slurred in a weird way. Yeah, that was something else. And right after that was in October, late October. And then I hunted all in November, and then in December, I decided that I had an extra day, and I dropped my son off at school, and we took my daughter and my wife, and we drove back up down the road. And this time I said, "Well, I'm gonna put some miles between that spot and where I want to hunt, because I want to see if I can't find something." So I knew this other Forest Service road, and I backed in, parked it, and I left my wife and my daughter in my truck, and I just wanted to go for a quick little look. and I walked down that road, and I was following somebody's footprints. There was about an inch and a half of snow on the ground, and I just followed this guy's tracks along, and there was a ravine with some water running on the left, and it was kind of a slope on the right side that was heavily altered, but there's thick trees everywhere. And I followed this guy's tracks down the road, and I know that at the end of this area, there's kind of like a big opening that somebody had put a salt lick on. And I was just going to go down there and kind of see if I couldn't jump something. So as I get down to that little opening, I'm hearing this little tapping sound. Tap, 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 tap. And I stopped, and I looked around. I kind of figured out where that tapping sound was coming from, and I looked up, and I thought to myself, woodpecker? And then it started tapping again. And this time I could discern that it was wood on wood. It was like beep, 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 beep. But it was real light. It wasn't a loud tapping sound. It was a real light sound. So I go, oh, okay, I know what that is. So I bent down. Big mistake. Never do it again. Bent down, picked up a large club-like branch that was laying on the ground, and I walked over to this tree, big, nice sized tree, and I just laid into it. And pow! Just hit that tree with that thing as hard as I could. And the opposite hillside just blew up. He was mad. He was growling. He was like that growl that they make when they're trying to build themselves up. And he starts coming down that hillside, just snapping branches. And oh my God, what did I do there? And I looked at my rifle, and I got a little 6mm with 3 shells in it. And I go, no, that's not going to work.
Not good.
Yeah, that's not going to work. So I just sort of, I threw my hands up in the air and said, okay. And I turned around and I started walking. I mean, my mind is telling me, and my legs are telling me, run. And then my mind kicked in and said, no, don't do it. You're going to trigger that predatorial response.
Right.
So, oh yeah, you've ever rolled a ball across the floor for a cat, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they'll pounce, and I think that Sasquatch does the same thing. You just can't. They might not kill you, but
it's like with gorillas. You want to stand your ground.
Right. So I turned my back on him, and I walked slowly, and it was hard to keep my legs from moving faster, but I made this concerted effort to slow my walk down. And as I was walking out, I was looking over my shoulder. Something paralleled me on my left side as I was walking back toward the truck, and I had a good 3/4 of a mile walk, so it wasn't like it was just right around the corner. I had to keep my composure, and I walked down there, and something followed me all the way to the truck. I could hear it coming through the brush. It was probably 50 feet up above me, and that brush is so thick you can't see 20 feet into it. As soon as I got to my truck, I still had that club, and I threw that club into the back of my truck and hopped in and put my rifle away and looked at my wife and go, you won't believe what just happened. And then I told her on the way as I was driving back to Lewiston. That's the two times that they got pretty aggressive. And then I was in close, and they were all the way around me, but I think that if you just keep your composure, you'll be okay. Is that something that sounds familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I do in the field. If there's anything going on, I just maintain my composure, and usually it gets diffused pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That clan that I've been interacting with, I pick apples, and it's always wild apples. I never take store-bought apples up there. And the apple tree is probably 2 or 3 miles away, so I'm having a feeling that they know where that tree is too. But I'm using their apples kind of as a gift, but sort of saying, here's some apples. You know, it's not. I'm not habituating. I don't like that whole idea.
Yeah,
I won't give them anything. I don't do that. I use their natural food source to make an offering to them. You know, I'm trying to get them to where they'll be relaxed and actually show themselves to me, because that's what I want. You know, I'm trying to get them to where they can trust me a little bit. I go in there usually without a firearm, because I think that deters an awful lot of stuff that could happen. The apples that I have put out, they've all been taken, and a couple of times when I've come back to check up on it, one time I pulled in, and I'm sure that they know the sound of my truck, because I've been in and out of there now. It's been about 5 years. I've probably been in and out of there, 100 times, and I'm sure they know what my truck sounds like. And
sure.
When I started to, I think they can hear it from miles away. So when I get in there, one time I walked up to the apple pile, and it was pretty depleted, but there were still a few left, and one of them still had bite marks in it. Looked like they were a small mouth.
Juvenile.
And it was. I think it was the juvenile that I seen the footprints, and the juice was still running out of the bite.
Did you take pictures of the apples?
Yes, I did.
I'd love to see your pictures.
Yeah, in that same area, in the snow time. So yeah, I had saved some apples. I picked them off that wild tree, and I saved them for like the winter time, and I took them back there right after the first snow and put them right down there. And I thought, okay, here you go. Here's one last apple treat for you before winter's gone. Well, I came back, and it looked like they'd used those apples that I placed out to draw a deer in, because there was some tracks that showed these tracks coming in, and then a big scuffle mark just passed. I took pictures of all of this, and a big scuffle mark, and then the deer tracks were gone. And I got some pictures of pug marks where their front hands were on the ground as they ran. You can see the knuckle.
Running
walking on all fours. Yes,
yeah.
I have pictures of that. And
awesome.
With the knuckles, the knuckle marks in the snow and that. I'll have to send you those. Those are cool.
Absolutely.
It's the only documented knuckle marks that I've found so far. Yeah.
It's not something that's very well talked about or known, and it's something we definitely need to watch for.
And I think you can find them if you just do it right.
Yeah, I agree.
There's I believe that they may chase on all fours. Maybe they ambushed them on all fours, but yeah, that deer came in there getting those apples, and his tracks disappeared. So they must have snatched him and picked him up.
They got him, sure.
And what was funny was they actually were smart enough to use the apples to lure the deer in.
Exactly. That's something that I was told by I don't know if you know about my contact. I call him Mr. Black. He and Go ahead. I was going to say that he and a couple of the other guys that my cop friend had the run-in with the feds both said the same thing independently, that they will bait other game animals.
I believe it. I was just using my logical sequences of what I saw in the evidence in the snow, and I knew that they did that. And that's the first time that I've ever seen it done or even heard of it done. And besides what you just said, so wow, that's some nice collaboration.
We had examples of, and I'll give you one. It's a picture I'm putting in my next book. It's of a deer that was hung up 11 feet in a tree. This is in the Adirondack Mountains of New York. And it's the second time it was done in a couple-year time period. A nurse actually found this hiking in the area. And when I contacted both of my sources independently, they said exactly the same thing. Yes, they will do this sometimes to bait. It sort of expands their food base by other animals being attracted to that one kill.
Mm-hmm.
Or in your case, apples.
Yeah, those are wild apples too, just a few miles away. Yeah, that's really cool to hear.
It's a very high degree of intelligence.
Mm-hmm. I believe these things are really intelligent. I do. I see a lot of examples of it in their structures. You know, they make some unbelievable structures. I've been this last year or so, I've expanded my territories. I've been going into Montana. I've been down to Yellowstone. I've got some fantastic pictures of structures in Yellowstone. Along the stretch of the road there, I counted 25 different structures just in like a 5-mile stretch, and I knew I was in it, so I just started to slow down a little bit and look for something very unique. And when I found it, I pulled up.
I should connect you with. I have people in Idaho and Montana, and I should connect you with them.
Cool. Yeah, I investigated the Skalkaho Pass, and I found what I believe is the largest X that. It's huge. It's 60 feet tall. And the logs that it's made out of. You can tell that they were imported because there was a log that was laying on the ground that had that split top that some trees have, and that one of the base of the X was just screwed down into that split part to hold it in place. It's cool. I took a picture of me. Do you know who Brian Sullivan is?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, he's in Montana, and I took him to the X because I wanted somebody else to see it, and he took a picture of me standing under it. But that's an amazing structure, and I found some other ones in the Skalkaho area, so I know there's a lot of activity there too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with all of those fires that happen, in and around Hamilton, that I'm sure a lot of Sasquatch got displaced and pushed up and over the mountain toward the Phillipsburg side. Yeah. I've done Yellowstone. I've been Montana. I've done a little bit in Oregon, but not a whole lot. And then I know up here in northern Idaho, there's a group that I call the Huckleberry Hill Clan, and that's where I got my audio from. I have over 6 hours of audio. They walked right up to my truck and were messing around with the audio and walking around it. You can hear them then chirping, and then the alpha comes in and he's growling and he's just like tearing the heck out of trees.
Let me ask you.
And then he. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you. I'm sure the audience is interested in hearing some of that audio. Do you have a piece that you'd be willing to put with this recording?
Yes, actually on my Facebook, I've made it public, and anybody can go in and listen to it. It's about 25 minutes long, and it's loaded.
And what's your Facebook page?
It's Richard Williams, Lewiston, Idaho, and it has a picture of one of those, those painted rocks. The craze is going around the United States of painting rocks. Well, I took one and I painted a Bigfoot on it, and that's my profile picture of my Facebook.
Okay, well, folks, if you want to hear some of Richard's recordings, go to that page and check it out.
Yes, it's really interesting. You'll like it. It says the clip at the top of it. It has my notes that I took a picture of, and it says Huckleberry 1, and then it has a list of parts of where in the audio what minute it's on and what is happening. There's screams, there's yells, there's tree breaks, there's whoops. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. There's a lot on that 6 hours. I just took the best 20 minutes of it that I thought would be the most interesting and posted that.
Sure. Well, very interesting.
Yeah, that Huckleberry clan is a pretty interesting group. That I haven't really concentrated on researching them. But every time I go there, I get an encounter.
Mm-hmm.
I saw something that I never thought I'd see. This year, we were up there picking berries, and I had picked the day before. And if you've ever done huckleberry picking, they're so small, and it's tedious. And I was just sick of it. Oh my God! I picked for 8 hours the day before, so I was just done with it. And my wife wanted to go back, so I said, "Okay, I'll be in charge of security. I'll just walk around the hill and just, I'll keep the bears off you." So
take a break from it.
Yes, I couldn't do it a second day. I just couldn't. It was, my eyes were crossing at the end of the day. So and every time I looked up and I'd see another huckleberry plant loaded with berries, I'm like, oh God, and then I'd have to go and clean it out. Not another one. Yeah.
No, I've done plenty myself. I can sympathize.
Yeah. So I'm giving her. She's going up there. She's picking real good. I'm standing up on the side of the hill, and I took a stick and I knocked on the side of the tree. And my wife looks up and she goes, "Are you crazy? Are you trying to call him in here?" And I
don't do that.
I go, "Oops, oh crap!" I just couldn't help it. And, it's in my blood. I just want to see what's out there. So I stopped and I go, "I'm sorry, okay, I won't knock, but I might make a couple calls." And she goes, "Oh," and then she went back and started picking. So I crow called, did a couple of really good crow calls, and I'm standing there, and then off in the distance I hear this crow coming in. He's calling and he's moving in. And he flies right over this ravine on the right side because it drops down to the road, and then over the edge of that road, it drops down into the ravines where down at the bottom is the water source. And it comes swooping in, and I hear, "Oh," like that. And I could hear him coming. He was coming up the ravine from the water, and he comes up, and then he growls, and he moves over. And I know that he knew that I drove the same truck that I had the year before when I got my audio. And I knew that he knew that was my truck, because he comes and he parks himself right down the bottom of the ravine right behind my truck, and he's down there growling. And then he stops. And that crow flaps its way back up towards where I am, and I get up on top of a stump so I can see better. So I climb up on this 3-foot stump, and I'm standing there, that puts me up, maybe I'm 6 foot, so I got a 9-foot clearance, and I'm looking down over the hill. And here comes this car. It drives along the road, and it goes right past us. It goes on up, and then I hear it stop, and I hear the car door slam. And I'm standing up on that thing, and I'm looking and looking, and then here comes this dog. He comes trotting down the road. And I think he smelled my chicken, because we had some chicken that we were eating, and we put it up on top of the truck, up on the roof. And he comes trotting down there, and he comes and he stops, and he walks over to the edge of that ravine and looks down where that Sasquatch was camped out at, and that Squatch ripped off a growl at him, and that dog turned and hightailed it back up that road. I mean, he spun and just started digging and running. And I could not believe what I just saw. I looked at that and went, "Oh my God, I got to see a dog get routed." It was crazy. It was just like a front row seat. I just got to see it because I was watching that dog and seeing which way he was going to go. And then he pulled in and he looked over the edge, and oh man, he got scared. He took off.
I saw the same thing with my own dog when I was 16. And I don't know if the Sasquatch has growled at him. I wasn't close enough yet to hear that, but he ran right before I had my first sighting. He ran up to the tree line. He stood there with his ears perked up, was rigid, and then he turned around and just tore back past me as fast as he could. So I am assuming something occurred there before I got within ear hearing range.
Yeah, it was a low guttural growl. It was kind of like a wolf in a way. It was a like that.
Yeah.
It was a low guttural growl. And So I'm standing there, and I watch the dog run, and then that crow, he flies up into this tree just down below me about 50 feet. And I hop down, and I walk over to my wife just to make sure everything's good. And I come back, and I was heading back to that stump that I'd stepped off of. And I look down over the edge, and now I'm 3 foot lower, but I can still, this crow was flapping his wings up and down like he was trying to fly. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking and looking, and I'm looking at his feet, and it looks like something had reached around the side of that trunk and had grabbed a hold of his feet. Because, you know, when you hold a chicken by its feet and it's flapping its wings, that's what the kind of the same thing I saw. And I'm looking at that crow, and I'm like, what in the world is wrong with him? And he's flapping, and I look, and you know, their hair is such a color that it just blends into nature so well. You know, it's not like a red shirt sleeve around that side of that trunk. But I could see something holding his feet because he just couldn't get his feet loose. And he was flapping, and then that went on for about 30 seconds, and then he got loose, and when he flew, he was flying. He was flying like he was hurt. You know, it was like he'd been beat up or something, and because his wings and the way he was gliding, he only glided. He went maybe about 75 feet, and then he landed on the ground. And I wow, and I sort of walked up towards him, and I got up there. I couldn't see him. I was looking for him. He was down in some brush, and he recovered and got up and then flew off, but his flight path was pretty shaky. It wasn't a normal flight path because he had obviously went through something. I wish I knew what happened, but that's what I saw, and it looked like something grabbed him from behind that tree. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Not that particular sort of thing. It was interesting that he got away.
Yeah, I don't know why. You know, maybe he had some feathers plucked from him.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But the way he flew off, it was like he was injured in a way, but not to where he still couldn't fly. Because I have a feather story that's pretty interesting.
Okay.
That tree, that place that I give them apples at, the wild apples. Well, one time I pulled in and I walked down there to check, see if everything was gone. Because I put toys out there too. I'll throw a couple of cars or something like that, and they've never touched them. They took one of the Legos one time and threw it about 2 or 3 feet away. But that could have been anything. It could have been a mouse or anything. Picked that up.
Sure.
You never can tell. But I walked up to that tree, and there was a crow feather stuck into the tree, in through a knothole. And I took pictures of that. I still have the feather. And I looked at it, and I go, oh, my word. And I go, there is no way in the world that a bird could have crashed into that and had that feather stuck in through that knothole. And the way it was stuck in, I took pictures of it all. I'll send you that, too.
Okay.
But that feather was an interesting... it's the only time they've ever done anything like that, as far as I know. You know, because that's the only one I've ever found. But that crow feather, right at that tree that I've been gifting from, it's not just a coincidence. I don't think it is.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah, they are an interesting creature. I don't know what that means. You know, I have no clue. But there it is. I found it, and it was right at the tree that I've been gifting at for quite a while. It's never been repeated. It's only happened one time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to distinguish what it is they're doing. I mean, that's, you know, group by group, whatever, you know, communication things that they do amongst themselves.
Yeah, I've got this rock thing that I do on the stumps out there. There's one stump that I line up 5 rocks on, and 3 separate times they've rearranged the rocks. And I have pictures of all of that too.
Oh, very interesting.
Three separate times.
Yeah. You got some before and after pictures?
Yes. Yep. I sure do. And every time I reset my rocks, I put them in a different pattern. And when I come back, they're in a different pattern. It's pretty amazing. It's happened to me 3 times. I've shown that to Ron Moorhead, and I've shown that to... I went to the International Bigfoot Conference 2 years ago, and I took my portfolio there and showed them, let them listen to some of my audio. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. I don't know what to make of it either. One of the rearrangements they did formed an X, and then one of the other rearrangements they made, it made kind of like a J. And then the third one was more of like a half moon of rocks. They put it into a half moon shape, but every time, they've all been rearranged, and they haven't done it in, I'd say 8 months now. Maybe they're just out on their trek, where they go, their different places range they go to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might be in the different part of their range and haven't made it back to where I've got my rock set again. Right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those 3 different times, that's pretty cool. I kind of would love to know what their symbols mean, but I think it's going to take a lot of research to find that out.
It'll be quite a few years before anything like that's known, I'm sure. Yeah, but I'm really glad I've got the pictures and the documentation so that I might be able to, in the future, know what it means. Yeah. Well, listen, we're running a little short on time. I'm serious about coming and visiting you, by the way. You're more than welcome. We've got a lot of room.
Welcome. This written story is being brought to you by William Jevning and is narrated by Jim Sower. The following was written by Dr. H. A. Miller, who died in 2005. Born in New England, December 12, 1909, I was the first and only child of Christiana and Arthur Miller. My mother died in childbirth, and I was subsequently raised by my father until remarried to a French woman when I was 12 or 13 years of age. Soon after their marriage, she bore a baby girl. I finished my high school education while living with my father, stepmother, and half-sister. I remained in New England for my undergraduate work. I thoroughly enjoyed the outdoors, the ocean, and forestry. My undergraduate studies focused on forestry and land management. While in my junior and senior year, I was employed by the federal government. I worked at Lockwood Farm, part of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. I learned about hybridization and agriculture and enjoyed the hard outdoor work in the cornfields. I began to find great interest in the scientific workings happening with corn seed at the time. I completed an additional year in forestry science and graduated in 1930 with an A.B. from Yale University and an M.F., Mastery of Science in Forestry, in 1931. I labored at Lockwood Farm for a few years and gained great interest in science and medicine. By this time, I did hope to attend medical school and become a physician. I expeditiously applied for medical school and was accepted to Harvard and began my medical training in 1938. Graduating from Harvard Medical School in the early 1940s, and I completed residency and fellowship at Harvard and began a very specialized career at the time in orthopedic forensic surgery, Massachusetts General Hospital, MGH, in Boston. Because of my previous work with the USDA, I was quickly employed by the federal government. My early years as a physician related mostly to providing medical support to various employee types, firefighters, etc., within the USDA/FS. I also became the forensic expert and anatomist for the USDA and was called to examine most major accidental deaths of USDA/FS servicemen. Due to my interest in genetics and early experiences in agricultural hybridization, I was assigned to scientific teams which investigated the physical nature of genetics. Our early experiments determined that DNA is the component of the chromosomes where genetics should be studied. This, along with the efforts of several other scientists, led to the discovery of the double helix structure in the early 1950s. It was at this time that several of our team members were called to Bandera County, Texas, where the forestry scientists, biologists assigned to Edwards Plateau reported the dead bodies of a strange type of human. The first reports I received were speculating that they were feral humans from the local Comanche Indian tribes. The bodies were supposedly found in or around one of the massive caves within the Edwards Plateau area. When I arrived in Texas, I was surprised to find 3 bodies, 1 adult female and 2 female juveniles. I examined them as I typically would any human subject, but to my dismay, one of the creatures still seemed to be alive. I became quite upset with the local scientists, but they reassured me that they confirmed all 3 were deceased. After further investigation, I found that these creatures were not human. They, in fact, had a remarkable rapid reparative process, hence the reason one of the creatures seemed dead, but in fact was regenerating to some degree. Unfortunately, the restorative abilities of the creature were not enough to keep it alive. They were massive in size and distinctly a new primate species unknown to science at the time. I spent years studying these creatures, which are scientifically known as Cebaditelidae, confirming that they were most certainly not human. They were definitely of primate origin, but with traits seen in various species of primate, most of which were New World monkey. Cebaditelidae found in the San Antonio, Texas area very much howl like a howler monkey, quite frightening to hear at night. At one point early in my analysis, I found a great deal of similarity between these Bigfoot creatures and the howler monkey. That was until 1962. In late 1962, early 63, I was notified of a large, human-like creature by the Redding Forest Service folks in California. I arranged for transport of the body to my primary location in Colorado. It was reported to me that the body was found under a large tree that had been violently struck by lightning and blown to the ground, apparently killing this large creature. During my investigation, I found the animal to be very similar to those that I had studied in Bandera County area of Texas, with some marked differences. This northern version of Cebaditelidae seemed to have the same New World monkey attributes that I noted in the Texas animals, known today as Cebaditelidae texicanus or C. texicanus. However, there were unique traits found in the Pacific Northwest animal, known today as Cebaditelidae nerteros pacificus or C. nerteros pacificus, including thumbs that are not entirely opposable, as we see in modern humans. C. nerteros pacificus' entire hand was truly designated for grip, including proximal pads, making the hand somewhat hooked-like, having flattened nails, resulting in my theory that these northern creatures developed an evolutionary arboreal nature, while the Texas subfamily developed a troglodyne nature. The Pacific Northwest, PNW, creature, found in 1962-63, also had scent glands on her forearms. This is more evidence that C. nerteros pacificus is arboreal to some extent, leaving scent marks up and down the tree while climbing. Not only was this creature smashed by the large tree, but she was also badly burned with areas of lightning prints on exposed skin. I notated in my medical examination report of the body that it seemed as though lightning struck the animal passing through the body and into the tree, subsequently weakening the tree and causing it to fall to the ground. It did seem as though the animal had fallen to the ground first, with the tree falling on top of her afterward, but the evidence as to whether the animal fell first or with the tree is inconclusive. However, it is clear lightning struck the tree at a decent height of over 20 feet. Therefore, this animal must have been clinging to the tree at the time of the lightning strike. More evidence of the arboreal nature of C. nerteros pacificus. C. nerteros pacificus also has additional medial padding on the feet, which it would use to climb trees by clinging to the trees with its hands and support its weight. Both the C. nerteros pacificus and C. texicanus have oversized lower jaws. Both the C. nerteros pacificus and C. texicanus have oversized lower jaws, including massive sternocleidomastoid musculature. This must have been due to their rugged diet, and moreover, their need to crush bones. Their lower dentum at first looked as a second row of molars, but after years of research and examining the dead bodies of these animals, I have found that the lower molars are simply oversized and fused, resulting in massive bone-crushing tools. Due to their jaw size and bone-crushing dentum, it is also clear that all subfamily of this creature are omnivorous, predaceous, and opportunistic. We did find that the female killed during the Columbus Day storm was pregnant with monozygotic embryos. All female Cibaditelidae bodies I have investigated throughout my career that have been pregnant have monozygotic embryos. This again incorporating additional evidence of a new world-monkey relationship. Due to my investigation of the 1950s bodies in Texas, the 1960s Pacific Northwest Columbus Day storm body, I submitted to the Department of Agriculture that this is a new Platyrini species and that a new family under the parvorder should be created. Fellow scientists of mine disagreed, given the fact that the creatures were examined in both cases were obviously bipedal and Catarrhini in terms of their nostrils, facing downward, Old World monkeys. However, the juveniles that we have examined are much more Platyrini in terms of nostril breadth and position. I won the debate in the end due to the fact that no evidence thus far demonstrates that these creatures crossed over from the Old World, but are simply New World monkeys adapting to their various staged areas within North and South America. I have since retired, and I know of some new University of Utah and Idaho-based scientists who understand the genetics a bit better. Their findings are only supporting my original theorems, or at least I am told. These molecular biologists will soon understand the similarities with humans once the Human Genome Project is completed. As a result, I still refer to the Sasquatch species as Cibaditelidae with the following subfamilies: Cibaditelidae arctos, Cibaditelidae nerteros pacificus, Cibaditelidae somphos, Cibaditelidae americanus, Cibaditelidae texicanus, and Cibaditelidae amazonia. Any of these species found outside the New World must have originated from and migrated out of the New World. All of my experience with this primate has been post-mortem, save a few unique experiences in the wild. To my knowledge, a live specimen has never been captured except for once in Northern Research Station in California. However, the animal did not survive in captivity and died after only several days. I, of course, examined the body. There were many rumors that this captured Sasquatch was somehow magical and could shapeshift, and that is why it couldn't be found. The truth is, the folks at Northern Research Station were very devastated and embarrassed that this live specimen died so quickly after being in captivity. So no, they are not magical. They are highly intelligent primates. Having one die in captivity is a very difficult thing to watch due to the human nature and feeling about the species. In reality, captivity will never be realistic for Cibitelidae because of their size and complex brains. Similar to captive white sharks, the species cannot thrive in captivity and quickly die as a protective mechanism. I've spent a great deal of my career as an expert for the federal government concerning Cibitelidae and throughout the world, including the bodies recovered in the 1980s due to Mount St. Helens eruption. We made many recommendations to protect the species, but the DOI has constant concern regarding the impact of such a decision due to the vast number of areas this species inhabits. Such a decision would have potential negative impacts on the natural resource industry. The USFS is now working more toward creating protective wildlife refuges for Cibitelidae. Others on the team focused on molecular genetics. The USFS and the DOI is recognizing now that the natural resource industry is not the economic center as it once was. So a final decision has been made to finalize the Class 1 identification of the species. There is a 20-year plan to incorporate all wildlife protection areas throughout many areas of the United States to ensure federal land protection for Cibitelidae, starting with California, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, Utah, and Washington. I was upset by this decision because the first location the species was identified scientifically was Texas. I petitioned, and as a result, the Government Canyon State Natural Area will be protected, opened to the public, and expanded in Bexar County, Texas. The long-term plan will be to open each of these designated natural areas to the public. Once all of the designated Cibitelidae natural areas are open to the public, the Department of Interior will announce the species as an endangered New World primate. I am not sure if this will happen, and the Government Canyon State Natural Area will not be open to the public until 2005, and then expanded later in 2009, and then again in 2012. This will all be happening long after I'm dead, I'm afraid. I am currently still living in Colorado, and I have attempted to journal my experience with the discovery of this new, massive primate. The species is amazing, powerful, and deadly if angered. Like any animal, it will protect itself, its food source, and its young at all cost. Artiodactyla, or hoofed animals, are Cibitelidae's primary food source. It is imperative that the federal government continue to designate natural areas. Otherwise, a scarce food resource available to Cibitelidae will result in more opportunistic feeding behavior and closer interaction between humans and Cibitelidae. These creatures and human beings simply do not coexist. This was written by H.A. Miller, M.D., Ph.D. He was influenced by the writings of anatomist Dr. Thomas Dwight, among which includes Frozen Sections of a Child, 1872, Clinical Atlas of Variations of the Bones of the Hands and Feet, 1907, and Thoughts of a Catholic Anatomist, 1911. This concludes the reading of Dr. H.A. Miller. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of CreekDevil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open.